Happy Hump Day. Thank you for watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. I feel like I just want to put this out there. I feel like I'm just rebooting my life right now, Carlene. Because like the seconds as we're going on, I'm like trying to get my laptop to work. I'm looking at my computer ahead of me that's not frozen. So it's just, it's one of those days where y'all can relate. Things just stop working.
It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. That's the good news. It's Wednesday.
It's good news.
It's good news. Wednesday, So, hey, we're here. We're that much closer, Carlene.
We're almost there.
I mentioned her name, but right across from me is super producer Carlene.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. We're almost there to Friday, so we got a lot happening today. I'm looking at the live feeds now. There's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. And so I always say this because it's true here on Live Impact News. There's so much that happens, so much develops, so much that breaks throughout the 2.5 hours that you guys are here. So buckle up. So let's start home. Let's start with a story that we've been following since early this month. And we're talking about the Dilworth home explosion. You may remember this story from earlier this month, but tonight, or I guess I should say this afternoon, I'm used to saying tonight on the TV scripts, but this afternoon, a WCNC Charlotte investigation uncovers a failure that put firefighters and people living in the Dilworth neighborhood at risk. We learned in the moments after a house explosion that rocked the Dilworth neighborhood earlier this month, sparking a huge fire. 2 of the closest fire hydrants did not work. Instead of immediately fighting the flames with a large supply of water, WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morabito discovered firefighters spent precious minutes scrambling to find a working fire hydrant. We have Nate in studio. Nate, I'm reading this, and this is disturbing. This is shocking. How did you come across this?
Yeah, I mean, like, you have a hydrant in your front yard, you expect it to work, especially if there's a fire, and then the firefighters go to hook up and it doesn't work. It's crazy. I learned about this through a tip initially and some on-the-ground reporting from one of our colleagues as well, where basically people in that neighborhood on Lombardi Circle were upset with the city because these hydrants were not functioning, and they would have never known it had a house not blown up and started a fire. And it's really kind of unclear to know if the firefighters could have hooked up sooner, if it would have made any kind of a difference, because there were 2 homes on either side of this house that people can't live in right now. You know, and part of it is because of the explosion. I mean, there was a house 4 houses down whose windows broke during this thing. So it's hard to kind of figure out what was caused by the fire that followed and what wasn't. We know that one of the neighboring houses' attics did catch on fire, and firefighters tried to put that off. But I started with a tip. We went out, we did some on-the-ground reporting, and talked to homeowners there and neighbors who just cannot believe it. They say it's unacceptable. And I think any objective person would say it is unacceptable. If you have a fire hydrant, it better be working, unless it needs to be serviced and it should be on a list to get fixed at some point. We're not talking about 1 hydrant. We're talking about 2 hydrants that didn't work.
Wow.
So it's just like, to me, insane to think that, particularly in this neighborhood, it's in the heart of the city. These are homes that over time have inflated in value, and they're paying more in taxes because of it. And not that any neighborhood should have any more right to working water than any other, but it's wild to think about how much money they're putting in their taxes and what they're getting in return is really, to me, the shocking part.
And you said you got a chance to speak. We actually have some of that, a portion of that interview, right? You got a chance to speak with it.
Here's 2 of the residents. We talked to Robbie Thacker and Amelia McMurphy. They're going to tell you kind of their thoughts.
Okay, let's listen into
I would
that.
expect quick service, which we got, professional service, which we got, and I would expect fire hydrants that work.
We pay pretty hefty taxes, and the expectation is that it would work, and we are so in the heart of the city. It's not like we are in the outskirts, so it's just heartbreaking to know that there was no water in it when it was actually needed.
Yeah, I mean, what sticks out just hearing those residents, I mean, it's heartbreaking, because this is your, when you think of your home, that's your safe space. That's where you go and, after a long day of work or whatever you're doing, that's where you can have some sort of, again, it's your sanctuary, right. And it's compromised.
Well, and I'll tell you, this part of town too. I'm sure you've gone down East Boulevard before, past all the restaurants down there. This Lombardi Circle, it's on either side of East Boulevard, near Freedom Park, and this is across the street from Freedom Park, essentially. And these homes are so close together.
Yeah.
Number one, so if it's going to explode, it's going to be a problem. But then if there's going to be a fire, I mean, Mealy, who we interviewed with her daughter, standing next to her, said you could feel the heat from across the street. The flames were incredible there. And they're not upset at the fire department. I mean, the fire department, they showed up within 3 minutes. Right. They're pretty pleased with the response there. The call went out, they got there in 3 minutes. Then it took them 5 minutes to find a hydrant that was working. So you're there 3 minutes in, and you have some water on your trucks and your fire engines that you're using to fight it, but that's not going to last you that long. It's not endless, but a huge supply of water. And they're scrambling. They're using resources to find these other hydrants that aren't closer. At one point on the scanner traffic that I listened to, they're saying the closest hydrant is the one on East Boulevard, which is not right next to that house. I mean, it's a good length of time to pull a hose from. So, the question that we had was, number one, why did this happen? Because it's unacceptable. It should not be happening. Number two, what is the city going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And that's really what at the heart of our investigation tonight at 6 looks at. I will tell you that Charlotte Water, who's in charge of the hydrant, says that this wasn't the city's fault. There's been a lot of development work on that street. There's been new developments going up. There's been contractors there. In fact, the people that live on Lombardi Circle, one of them even emailed me several months ago with concerns about the damages that they said contractors were causing on their street, the lack of respect they felt these crews were giving to them. We know that their water has been shut off multiple times due to some potential infrastructure improvements, plus the other crews working there. And now the city is saying these hydrants didn't work because contractors essentially were messing with them. They were not using them appropriately. They were messing around with some of the equipment of it for whatever reason, we don't know. But that made it difficult for the hydrants to function. So now the question is, well, what is the city going to do about this, right? The city says they're increasing oversight moving forward. If you have construction in your neighborhood, if there's utility work in your neighborhood near a fire hydrant, they will be checking those more often to make sure they are working. And unbelievably, really, nobody was killed in this situation.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was early in the morning. You have to think that most people were home. It was like after 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
And, the fire, I think it took them about an hour or so to get the fire under control. And again, these homes are really close to each other, and there's development behind it. So thank goodness this didn't turn out worse than it was, but it still was bad. And for these people that live nearby there, I mean, how can they trust that they're going to be protected by their fire hydrants moving forward? This shakes you to your core there.
It's, and I don't want to sound accusatory, but it's kind of hard to believe that the city didn't know that contractors were working on the streets or doing development work, and the water was being shut off, and that these hydrants were compromised. Like, they should know that, right?
So this is like one of my core problems
Yeah.
with the reporting that I do in this area. There is a lack of accountability. We requested an interview, right? I left multiple voicemails just to talk to a human being to
Yeah.
understand, because these are the conversations that come up when you interview or talk to people. In an email, which I got an email statement, there's no room for that. I don't know what their systems show. I don't know if there's a computer system that shows when there's low or no flow in part of their hydrant system. But we're in 2025, you would think there might be some technology, or if a contractor is going to mess with a hydrant, you would think there'd be some kind of communication or process in place. So what I will do, and this is what I usually do in reporting when it comes to government processes, the relevant city council members that are on committees that kind of help govern our water should be made aware of this. And I will share this with them and say, what are you all doing to make sure, beyond these spot checks, beyond the continuous monitoring, just to make sure these kind of things don't fall through the crack? Because again, there were 2 hydrants very close to that home. Firefighters couldn't use either of them.
2-part question. Are those hydrants working now? And do those residents feel safe living there still?
Yeah, so the residents tell me that they came out and they fixed the one hydrant, and it is working for sure. And the idea is that the other one should be functioning now too. And yes, I mean, they feel relatively safe, but they also feel like they've lost their neighborhood. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
historic neighborhood. Developers are coming in, building. They're getting offers to buy their homes.
Yeah.
Their homes kind of have a lower square footage for how much the homes are valued at. And so, yeah, I mean, it does shake your concern a little bit when you're used to living in a place and you're feeling like you've got the good protection you need. But they are very pleased with the firefighters' response.
Yeah.
Right.
So the people in all of this, they can rely on them, they feel like. The system, the hydrant, the equipment, they have their doubts about.
And another thing that kind of comes to mind is, and correct me if I'm wrong, they do races in these areas like 5Ks and
Yep.
10Ks. I'm just thinking, what if this would have happened during one of these big events? Charlotte is a run community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, what would have happened?
I mean, they
Yeah.
always have these firefighters, when they train for these kind of situations, right? They train for anything to go wrong. So they have plans in place and training that lets them kind of keep looking for the next available hydrant. They were able to come up with a solution. Again, we don't know, if those extra 5 minutes, what kind of impact, if any,
Yeah.
they had. But I'm telling you, there's tons of restaurants up there.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
tons of historic homes over there.
Yeah.
There's tons of new condos and apartments over there. And if this can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
Right.
Right? So take the neighborhood out of it
Yeah.
for a second. The fact that 2 hydrants closest to a place where a house exploded didn't work should be an alarm to everyone. In any part of the city, they should be demanding that their systems are in place that work for them and protect them.
And I just want to point out, separate but related, the homeowner accused of setting the fire was arrested in Chicago.
Fugitive of justice, right?
fugitive- yeah.
I think it was a little more than a week after the explosion happened. I checked yesterday, and I didn't see any formal charges against him.
I didn't see
Yeah.
any either.
I
Yeah.
haven't checked.
Yeah, I was actually off the day it happened, so I was kind of a little bit playing catch up once I received the tip about the concerns there. But the whole thing is just incredibly heartbreaking. There's one neighbor who is for sure displaced
Yeah.
because of this, no fault of their own. and the other home has been impacted too. I'm told those people are displaced too. And so you got this neighborhood trying to come together to help these people, but they're also coming together to call for accountability at the city of Charlotte. And they've been asking the city to help them for months as it is because of their problems with the contractors. So it's this kind of boiled over here.
Wow. That is Nate Morabito, does incredible work. I highly recommend if you have an issue or problem, reach out to Nate, reach out to the team as a whole, but reach out to Nate because, again, Nate does great work. And what I love about Nate's work is that he takes his time. And when that story comes out, it is, I mean, Nate's not going to give himself a pat on the back, but it is close to perfection because you do a great job. You
We're
take
trying
your
to button it up.
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah.
a question. I just,
Yeah.
not to delay
Yeah,
it
yeah,
any
yeah,
longer, but if there's somebody that's listening right now that has a hydrant in front of their house and wants to know, does this work? Who do you reach out to? Because you said there's
Yeah.
no sort of resource to show that, right?
Well, we don't know because they wouldn't do an interview with us.
Right.
But we can tell you that firefighters
So you reach
will
out to
usually-
Charlotte Water?
So Charlotte Fire Department should know, first of all.
Okay.
They go annually. I believe they test them annually. That's at least the standard. They may test it more than that.
Yeah.
Every hydrant to make sure they're functioning. You should reach out to Charlotte Water to ask them. I would do that if I had a hydrant in my front yard. And you should reach out to your city council member. Hey, I saw WCNC Charlotte's reporting this. How can I be assured that my hydrant in my neighborhood is working right now?
Because there's no marker. Like if it's not working, they don't put a marker on the hydrant.
They will,
they
though.
do?
Yeah, I think, a few years ago I did a story about some hydrants that were not working in Gaston County. And at that time, Charlotte Water told me more than 99% of their hydrants are working at any given time. And there was some kind of tag, if I recall,
Okay, so
on
they-
it.
okay, I was
that
just
kind of
curious.
flagged it as non-functioning. And I think it said as much. Now, that was in Gaston County, but I think that's fairly common.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, just keep that in mind. And this story, by the way, should be on WCNC.com right now. If it's not been published yet, I believe it has been.
Okay.
So you can look at the details there, kind of see the ins and outs of our reporting. It's going to air on TV tonight at 6. But yeah, reach out to your council members. Reach out to Charlotte Water. You pay monthly bill for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Reach out to the fire department. They should
Someone
know less
should have an
than-
answer.
When's the last time has this hydrant been tested? It may even say it on the tag.
Yeah.
Sometimes that will happen too.
And look, this story will inspire folks to go back and
Yeah.
again check the status of their hydrants and know who to contact as
I
well.
mean, you don't need it until you need it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about the hydrant across the street from
Yeah.
my house
No.
ever,
Yeah.
but now I am.
Yeah. No,
Right.
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 All
Unfortunately.
right, man, Nate, thank you again. And you can catch that story right now online on
Should be on there, yep.
All right,
WCNC.com, and I'll be on TV tonight at 6 to have the full TV story.
Nate, thank you for your time, man.
Appreciate y'all.
Man, an incredible story there. All right, let's shift gears now. President Trump. All right, so let me make sure I have the right information for you guys. Okay, so we want to send you now to Washington, D.C., where President Trump is speaking. This is President Trump. He is meeting. He is having a meeting with the president of the Republic of South Africa. You see him there. They have been speaking for the past 20 minutes, 30 minutes now. We saw them come up live a few minutes before we got on the show, but here it is. Let's take a listen in.
This is one after another. This family was wiped out. I'm just looking.
Can we get a report from President Ramaphosa,
Your
please?
reaction to those videos, Mr. President?
President Trump.
Well, I think the videos are so. No. When you look at the videos, I mean, how does it get worse? And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their land. That's what.
These allow Ramaphosa
And I
to
have other
respond.
friends in South Africa. I have people that left. One in particular that says you can't go there. He said they want to take your land. They take your land and they kill you. It's okay, and they say it's okay to do. Now we're going to talk about it.
We're going to.
But this is a tremendous look. This is story recent.
Yeah.
These are all people that recently got killed,
Yeah.
and I don't know how it can get any worse. These are. And you know, the men that you saw, the people that you saw in that movie, those are officials. Those are people that were in office. They had one march, they had a dance, in your parliament, whatever you may call it, legislature.
Well,
and
let me
it was
clarify
terrible.
that.
Yeah.
Let me
please.
clarify that, because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
and then
take
when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
Nothing happens to
There
them.
is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
The
been
farmers are
utilized.
black. The farmers are not black.
We-
I don't
now-
say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off, they died violently. And, you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't
we
know
will
we'd get
talk about it.
involved here. But I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake, like NBC, which is fake news, totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it. But they won't. This won't even be a subject. They'll have him talking about why did a country give a free, think of this, why did a country give an airplane to the United States Air Force? Okay, the United States, not to me, to the United States Air Force, so they could help us out, because we need an Air Force One until that's Air Force One, it's being built, 2 of them being built. But Boeing's a little bit late, unfortunately. So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay. But coming back to this issue, which I really would like us to talk about, and talk about it very calmly. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are
and this is
problems.
precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States.
Those are all recent. Those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about. Let me just add quickly, you know, the criminality that we are experiencing in our country needs quite a lot of technological capability. And in one of our areas in South Africa, we're using US technology, which is able to, in many ways, identify where shootings are happening and all that. And I'd like to talk about that, because there is support that we can get from you as the United States to help us deal with all these acts of criminality. And that is what I believe partnership is all about. And we are here as a partner so that we can help each other whenever there are challenges. So I'd like us to discuss it, and of course outside of the media, so that we sit down and have a really good discussion that will lead to good outcomes.
Are there any other further punitive measures that could be in place should you not be satisfied that South Africa is fixing some of the very bad things, in inverted commas, that you tweeted are happening?
Well, there are a lot of bad things happening in many countries, but this in particular has been very, very bad, very bad. And because of we're going to have the whole world watching in another short period of time because you have the G20, and that's a big deal. And it seems like, I want you to look good. I don't want you to look bad.
Very good.
But we have hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to come into our country because they feel they're going to be killed and their land is going to be confiscated. And you do have laws that were passed that gives you the right to confiscate land for no payment. You can take away land for no payment.
I want to clarify that because we have a constitution. Our constitution guarantees and protects the sanctity of tenure of land ownership. And that constitution protects all South Africans with regard to land ownership. However, we do say, because we've got to deal with the past, the government, and as your government also has the right to expropriate land for public use.
And you're doing that.
And we've never really gotten underway with that. And we are going to be doing so.
You're taking people's land away
we have not.
from them.
We have,
And those people, in many cases, are being executed.
yeah.
They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases, those people are being executed. And in many cases, it's not the government that's doing it. It's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia in a smaller number. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country, and they're white farmers, and they feel that they're going to die in South Africa, and it's a bad thing. Yeah, please.
What can South Africa do? What concessions would you like to see them make to improve relations with the United States? Then I have one more for President Ramaphosa afterwards.
Well, we just spoke about, I got them a very, very complex machine, 150 of them. I was asked by the president if it could help, and I did that. And, I have great feeling for all countries. I deal with all countries. But I have a great feeling for South Africa because I have friends. I have a couple of friends, a few friends here today. I have many friends from South Africa, but many of those friends are not, they can't go back. I have Elon is from South Africa. I don't want to get Elon involved. That's all I have to do, get him into another thing. But Elon happens to be from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. He actually came here on a different subject, sending rockets to Mars, okay? Yes. He likes that better. He likes that subject better. That's right. But Elon is from South Africa, and I don't want to talk to him about that. I don't think it's fair to him.
That's right.
But I will say that people are fleeing South Africa for their own safety. Their land is being confiscated, and in many cases they're being killed. And that scene of, you see how many crosses they have. Those crosses, that's a dead person in every one of them. And those trucks or cars are paying their respects to all of those dead people on a Sunday morning. That's a rough thing to explain away. And the problem we have, and the way, a correct and a fair media exposes things. But we have a very corrupt media. They won't even report this. If this were the other way around, it would be the biggest story. Now, I will say apartheid, terrible. That was the biggest story. That was reported all the time. This is sort of the opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it. All we know is we're being inundated with people, with white farmers from South Africa, and it's a big problem. Marco Rubio was telling me he's never seen anything like it. The numbers of people that want to leave South Africa because they feel they're going to be dead very soon. Yes, please.
I was going to say,
Brian, go.
If I could just ask you a question. 72% of farmers in your country are white. If they flee, do you feel that maybe the economy could collapse? You may not have a gap to fill in those people that need to replace those farmers.
I'd like my Minister of Agriculture, who is white, who comes from an opposition party to mine, who's joined my government at my invitation to address this very issue, including the question that you've just raised. John?
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah.
And Mr. President, thank you for welcoming us to the White House. I would say we have a rural safety problem in South Africa. I don't think anyone wants to candy coat that. And it requires a lot of effort to get on top of it. It's going to require more policing resources. It's going to require a different strategy to be able to deal with it. But certainly the majority of South Africa's commercial and smallholder farmers really do want to stay in South Africa and make it work. And I've just come from the largest agricultural show in the Southern Hemisphere with organized agriculture and farmers, and the majority of them want to stay. But they too there have a memorial to those who've died as a result of farm attacks. And as the Minister of Agriculture, it is something that I'm particularly exercised with my colleagues at police and my colleagues in the justice cluster to start making farm attacks and stock theft a priority crime. And it affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on smallholder black farmers. I also want to just say this, that the two individuals that are in that video that you've seen are both leaders of opposition minority parties in South Africa. Mkhonto Wesizwe under Mr. Zuma and the economic freedom fighters under Mr. Malema. Now the reason that my party, the Democratic Alliance, which has been an opposition party for over 30 years, chose to join hands with Mr. Ramaphosa's party was precisely to keep those people out of power. We cannot have those people sitting in the union buildings making decisions. And that is why after 30 years of us exchanging barbs across the floor in Parliament and trying to get one over on each other, we've decided to join hands precisely to keep that lot out of government, because the day they get in to the doors of the union buildings in South Africa or control of our Parliament, that's what you're going to see. And that is why this government, working together, needs the support of our allies around the world so that we can strengthen our hand, grow our economy, and shut the door forever on that rabble getting through the doors of the union bodies, because then South Africa's future would be...
So you denounced that type of language in the video that you saw?
Oh yes, we've always done so. As government, as my own party, we are completely opposed to that. We, in 1955, adopted a document which said South Africa belongs to all who live in it.
But why wouldn't you arrest that man? That man said, kill the white farmers, kill the white farmers. And then he danced, and he's dancing, and it's kill the white farmers. I think, I'm not sure, but I think if somebody got up in Parliament and started saying kill a certain group of people, he would be arrested very quickly. That man is going all over South Africa, and that's not a small party. That was a stadium that holds 100,000 people, and I hardly saw an empty seat. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of representation. And those crosses, we have dead white people, dead white farmers, mostly. And you take a look at Australia, they're being inundated, and we're being inundated with people that want to get out. And their farm is valueless. It's valueless. And they just want to get out with their life. And this is a very serious situation. And if we had a real news or real press or media, we don't have that, because they won't talk about this, because they're all guys like that idiot. But if we had a real press, it would be exposed. And you know, the beauty of exposing it is it's like a cleansing action. When it gets exposed, it'll get fixed. That's when it'll get fixed. But people don't talk about it. And I'll tell you who's talking about the thousands of people that are fleeing South Africa right now.
Will you discuss USAID and the devastating impact the cuts are having across the African continent?
Yeah, well, it's devastating, and hopefully a lot of people are going to start spending a lot of money. And I've talked to other nations. We want them to chip in and spend money too. And we've spent a lot, and it's a tremendous problem going on in many countries. A lot of problems going on. The United States always gets the request for money. Nobody else helps, as you know. Europe doesn't help. Europe hasn't given anything. All they do is sue our companies. You know, they sue Apple, and they sue all of our companies. Apple had to pay $17 billion on a nonsense lawsuit. Very unfair. But we're going to always be there to help.
President, the Afrikaner extravagant rights to South African broadcasting. If this Afrikaner resettlement issue is resolved, you're going to go into a room after this, you guys are going to talk. If it is resolved, what is the potential for the future-looking relationships
It's
between the United
fantastic.
States?
It's got to be resolved. It should be resolved. I mean, it's a little bit bad when you see a stadium with 100,000 people in it, because that means it's more than just a little movement. It's a pretty big movement in South Africa, so it has to be resolved. It'll be the end of the country if
But
it's
is
not
there
resolved.
potential for the relationship moving forward?
I hope so. That's why I'm here.
November.
I mean, I'm not here for my health. I'm here to see what it is. No, I'd like to see. I have friends. I can tell you, Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, they feel so strongly they wanted to be here on behalf of South Africa, not on behalf of me.
Yes.
And, you know, they said, can we be here for this? Because they love the country. Ernie, do you guys want to say a couple of words or anything? I hate to put you in this. This is tougher than sinking a 3-footer. They have, and they've sank many 3-footers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thanks for the honor of being here. We've known each other a long time. We have spoken. You know, we're proud South Africans. I still have my South African passport. We travel with this passport, you know, and I got my visa here. So, you know, but we want to see things get better in our home country. That's the bottom line. It's been 35 years since the transition. President Ramaphosa was right in the middle of the transition time in 1990 and before that. So it's been 35 years of ANC government, and I know there's a lot of anger, you know, through the transition. There was also a lot of stuff happening in the apartheid days. You know, we grew up in the apartheid era, but I don't think two wrongs makes a right. You know, President Mandela, when he came out of prison for all that time, didn't come out with hatred, you know, and really unified our nation through sport. You know, we won the Rugby World Cup in '95.
4 times.
We won the African Nations Cup, soccer. You know, we won some majors as golfers and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, this has been a long time coming. That's why we really wanted to meet you, meet the administration, and see our way forward, because we still want to see our country flourish. You know, we've got some great things going on. Business is getting involved with government. Farmers are getting involved in local municipalities, trying to rebuild some of the infrastructure that's been decaying for a long time. So there's a lot of coexistence going on and help from a lot of areas. But I feel we need the US to push this thing through. We've got a great ally if we can have the US. It's always been an ally of South Africa for a very long time. Even in the days of the war, you know, up in Angola, you know, you guys helped us. So very important for us to have your support and you know, get the change we need.
Boy, did you do that well. He might have done that even better than he plays golf, which is almost impossible. Johan, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, if you had to wind all of those tapes properly, you will see I'm the biggest target of that rabble-rouser. #1 for over 10 years, Mr. Malema. In fact, the first time I met him, he was in the youth league with that gentleman, and look how he's changed.
Right.
We have too many deaths, but it's across the board. It's not only white farmers, it's across the board. And we need technological help. We need Starlink at every little police station. We need drones. I actually got drones donated for the peace parks to stop elephant and rhino poaching. And his predecessor stopped the importation because he said the United States would spy on us. I mean, US basics, the ridicule. So if you can help us. Remember, sir, you and I lived in New York in the 70s. We never thought New York could be what it became. 2 commissioners, a tough mayor. We need your help to stop this awful killing. But it's across the board. Ernie is right now building a house in George. I'm building 3 cottages for my grandchildren on a farm outside Trump-Ramaphosa. I often go to bed without locking the door. And we have a serious problem with illegal aliens who stream across the border. And if you really look at our statistics, a lot of these murders, firstly it's unemployment and illegal aliens. And then I met Vice President Vance many years ago at the Charlie Rose show. My wife loved the book. And she reminded me this morning that you emphasized the devastation that occurs when big companies leave towns and cities, and there's a culture of dependency that develops. And I remember you discussing it. Now that's our problem. If we don't get our economy to grow, the culture of dependency and the lawlessness will increase. I've again been against apartheid all my life, and I'm their #1 target. Please just Google my name and Malema. You'll see it, sir. He marched on the farm.
But the crime is bad.
The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats. Gangs. We've got gang warfare. Like your M33, whatever these guys. We've got equivalents there. But we need your help, sir. And we need Elon technology.
Well, one of the real areas of support is really in investments. We've got to grow our economy, because through growing the economy, we're then able to create more jobs. Because crime really thrives where there is inequality and unemployment. And that is one of the reasons that has brought us here, to improve our investment relations, our trade relations, so that we can preserve the number of jobs that your companies have created in South Africa. By virtue of what we export to you, we are able to create up to 500,000 jobs in the auto industry, in the agricultural industry, and a number of other industries, mining, where we export things to you. And we also know that as South African companies invest here, you are also able to create jobs. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So our main real reason for being here is to foster trade and investment, so that we are able to grow our economy with your support, and so that we are also able to address all these societal problems, because criminality thrives when people are unemployed, when they have no other hope to eke out a living. So that is what we need to resolve, and your support, your partnership with us is what is really going to give us a strong capability to move forward.
Retief, do you have, excuse me, do you have anything to say? I mean, I don't want to leave you out. You know, the guy won 3 or 4 majors. 3 or 4?
No, only 2.
2. That's a lot. By the way, 2's a lot. A lot of tournaments you won too. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. President Ramaphosa. I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane. And there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it. But it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer, and at the end they, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers to produce the food.
Farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing, right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those two things, you can't survive.
How is the water there?
The water is great. Obviously, all the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the water out.
So does your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
Both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult. But the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
Something.
President Trump, I brought along the president of the largest trade union in our country, Ziggy Solosi, because she leads many, many workers, more than 1 million, 2 million workers. And maybe we should give her a chance to say something, because she's come all the way to join us.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Trump, for having us, and President for extending the invitation to us as organized labor. And I must say that we are here to support the initiative that has been made by our government with business, of course, as organized labor. We've been coming to Washington on the AGOA trade relations in the previous regime, and I think at the center of it all, for me, it is exactly what Mr. Rupert has said, the importance of us growing the economy. We have always emphasized when we were here and kept on coming and negotiating on AGOA that the 600 US companies that are based in South Africa, as you said, President Ramaphosa, 500,000 jobs will be wiped out. We need more foreign direct investment in our country. We are not just talking about those that will lose employment, but we are talking about over 40% of people that are unemployed, that have no hope of ever finding a job. And we think that, correctly, as they have said, that we need to deal with the issue of porous borders in our country, so that everyone that comes in is documented. We also need to, and I would have thought that the minister would address the issue of land expropriation and how the policy works in South Africa. Recently, President, as you were preparing to come here on the news, in, I think it was in Natal, there was a handover of farms, and white farmers were saying, we are donating the land, but also there's a willing buyer, willing seller in South Africa. So there is no expropriation without compensation, but it is a willing buyer, willing seller. And that white farmer was even saying, President, that the government is even paying more in buying the land than what the land is worth of. And I think those are the realities, President, that we must say that we need to address, of course, but also the importance of agriculture linked to AGOA. People rely on it, and I think, as Retief have said, for survival and living. But lastly, for me, President, is also the issue of the crime statistics. There is no doubt about it that we are a violent nation, for a number of reasons, and we're not condoning anything. But also, if you go into the rural areas where black majority are, you would see women, elderly, being raped, being killed, being murdered. And these are black elderly women that would be found throat slits, raped multiple times, and all of that. And the problem in South Africa, it is not necessarily about race, but it is about crime. And we think that we are here to say, how do we, both nations, work together to reset, to really talk about investment, but also help us in how we can have the technology and everything that is needed, President, to really address the levels of crime that we have in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
President Trump,
Genocide is a very strong word. I'm wondering if you can make up your mind as to whether you believe genocide is occurring in South Africa, or you still doubt, and if you have made up your mind, why invite President Ramaphosa here today?
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I hate to see it from the standpoint of South Africa, but also, I'm trying to save lives. I'm working with Russia and Ukraine. I don't have to do that. It's not our war. It was started by other people. It was helped along by our past administration. It would have never happened if I were president, but I'm trying to save lives. And no matter where. Rwanda, I have nothing to do with Rwanda and the Congo, but I felt I had a very talented person in this administration, and I sent him there, and he did an unbelievable job, I think. I mean, we're going to find out, but he's done the hardest part of the job. It should happen. If I can save lives, I want to save the lives. If it's in Africa, that's great. If it's in Europe, if it's wherever it may be. And it's a very small investment to do, believe me, compared to what the consequences are. So I hope we can do something. Look, I have so many friends. These two men, I have great admiration for them because I know what they do for a living. Yeah. And that's a very hard living. Going from city to city, from country to country, and hitting a ball 350 yards like they do, and
better than you and I.
Getting the ball in the hole. It's a very tough, with lots of people watching, right?
Yes,
That's a very tough living. They're champions. I respect champions, and I respect very much. And I think the country is very lucky. They really wanted to be here.
That's true.
They could be elsewhere. They could be on a beautiful fairway someplace, and they wanted to be here.
I'm glad you brought
So.
My name is Yanda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa in South Africa.
Good.
How important is it for the United States to be at our G20 summit in November, given the relationship between our two countries? You've just heard what has been said to you just now. Are you coming? And are you preparing to come?
So without the United States, the G20, just like the G7, used to be the G8, but brilliantly they threw Russia out. Would have been a lot better if Russia was in. A lot of people would say, oh, that's not it. Because if Russia was in, you probably wouldn't have this war. And if you had a different president, you wouldn't have the war either. But we have a G7. It's important that the United States is at both of them. I think without the United States, I really believe it's not very important. It's not the same meaning.
As I said to President Trump, the U.S. really originated the G20. And it's important that the United States continues to play a key role in the G20. And we are privileged to be the president of the G20, but we are even overjoyed that we are going to hand over to the United States, who are the originators. And for that reason, I expect the United States to continue playing the leadership role in the G20 together with other countries. And I've said when I initially spoke to President Trump on the phone, I want him to come to South Africa for a state visit, and I also want him to come and participate in the G20. And I want to gladly hand over to President Trump to take the leadership of the G20 forward in November.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What is it going to take to convince you?
They don't want to leave.
They like you so much.
How much do you need?
Everybody, please keep moving. Thank you. Keep moving. Keep moving. Now. Keep going. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. You're watching live as President Trump and the president of South Africa wrap up their meeting in an effort to salvage their relationship. That exchange you saw there in the Oval Office, it got pretty tense as they went back and forth over Trump's claims that the country's government was allowing genocide to take place against minority white farmers. So again, there was a tense exchange there there was an effort to salvage their relationship. South Africa's president coming to meet with President Trump there. Okay, that shot just went out. But yeah, so that meeting just wrapped up. We have a few things going on live. Do you want to go to where we want to go to next, Carlene? I know we have some a hearing happening right.
Yes, with the budget hearing for the Department of Education, Linda McMahon is testifying.
Okay, yeah, the budget hearing. We want to take you. We want to stay in DC right now, and take you here to the budget hearing for the Department of Education.
I believe that was the Department of Education.
Okay. So let's take a listen in. This is what Department of Education was having this hearing right now, or hearing for the Department of Education. What's happening? Let's take a listen in. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
We know for a fact that in the past, when military bases have been used for immigration purposes, it has degraded our military readiness, which is one of the many reasons why I oppose using Fort Bliss for detention. But do you know how many beds and the cost per bed that's slated for Fort Bliss?
Ma'am, I would defer to DOD on the cost, as DOD is providing that portion of the budgetary piece. Fort Bliss, right now, we're looking at approximately 3,500 beds at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Acting Director, if you know, and if you don't, then you need to get back to me on this. How many beds is DOD supporting across military installations for detention purposes for you guys? Gitmo, Fort Bliss, whatever. Can you give us a ballpark number?
Yes, sir. Right now, at Fort Bliss, we do have 69 detainees at Fort Bliss right now. We have reached out to other facilities such as Fort Leonard Wood, Fort Bliss. We're in the process of standing those up. Some of these are going to be new and existing, so the bed space, I don't have the exact count yet, but I will get you that exact count, sir.
Okay. Do you know, is DOD going to bill ICE for that? Is that going to be, how are the books going to be trued up between DOD and ICE for space in military facilities that are going to be used for detention activities?
Sir, ICE is providing the contracting vehicle, but the funding for that will come out of DOD budget, sir. So I'd have to refer you to DOD on that, sir.
Okay, so you don't expect to get a bill from DOD for their facilities for detention?
No, sir.
How about military airlift? Do you expect to get a bill from DOD for that, or are they going to absorb that in their budget?
No, sir. I'll refer you to DOD on that one, sir, for the proper answer. But no, sir, I do not expect a bill from DOD.
Okay. How many additional beds do you anticipate bringing online with the transferred funding of the $312.5 million that is the request that you put in for reprogramming?
We're looking to come online, sir, up to 60,000 beds at this time.
And that is through, what's the time frame for those coming online?
Through the beginning of fourth quarter this year, sir.
Okay. Will you still have a shortfall after this potential transferred funding? Do you know?
Sir, I can promise the committee and I guarantee that we're going to financially work within our means to ensure that we do not have a shortfall, sir.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. We want to shift away from that hearing to bring you here. So let me read you the headline from NBC News' website. House Republicans press ahead on President Trump's agenda bill with key issues up in the air. So this is the House Rules Committee. They're holding a markup on the package that began at 1 a.m. Yes, 1 a.m. Speaker Mike Johnson seeks to bring the bill to the floor as soon as today. Now, House Republican leaders are racing to drag a sweeping bill for President Donald Trump's agenda across the finish line, even as some holdouts are dug in and key issues remain unresolved. Again, they have been debating this multi-trillion-dollar domestic policy package since a little around 1 a.m. this morning, the final step before it heads to the full chamber. So let's listen in to where they are now. You're talking about more than 12 hours
We
later.
should note, too, it appears, just because Jane and I were watching it this morning during the 9 to 11 stream here on WCNC Plus, that it looks like there's different panels coming in.
Okay.
So maybe it's not the same people doing like a 12-hour discussion.
Okay. So
It appears that way. Now, I can't confirm, but it does seem like seems to be changing in and out, the people
Okay.
around the microphones.
which would make sense.
Yes.
But yeah, let's listen into what's going on right now.
You do, which puts your health care at risk. And so ultimately, why I'm here offering up this amendment is because what my colleagues have talked about, the features and benefits of your bill are ultimately the most wealthy and corporations are going to get tax cuts, where the most vulnerable are going to be punished. And ultimately, I leave with this message. The American Cancer Society, if we can agree upon one aspect of life, Chairwoman, the American Cancer Society has an ad on social media saying just to be specific, 1 in 3 children will have cancer, 1 in 10 adults with a history of cancer have Medicaid for their care. They're advocating against this bill because they know the impact of it. So ultimately, today, what I'm asking for is support of this amendment to make sure that the most vulnerable of populations have access to health care. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Mervan. Mr. Tonko, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on 2 of my proposed amendments. It is said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I just don't see what Republicans find beautiful about this ugly bill. Is it the 13.7 million Americans that will lose their health care, the children that will go hungrier, the energy bills that will go higher thanks to repealing critical tax credits? Clearly, Republicans can't be too proud of it. Otherwise, we would not have started this whole process at 1 a.m. in hopes of suppressing debate on its many, many flaws. Given the many problems with this legislation and the fact that it is being changed in the dead of night, I urge you to have an open rule so that all submitted amendments can be properly debated on the House floor. But short of that, I would ask you to make my 2 amendments, numbers 89 and 270, in order. 193,000 people in my district rely on Medicaid. That's 25% of all residents, including 57,000 children and nearly 20,000 seniors. Every single one of them will be impacted by this heinous package. These are not just numbers on a page. They are deliberate choices with real-world consequences, including real people's lives. And for what? Why are Republicans so hell-bent on cutting Medicaid and forcing people off of their health insurance? So rich people like Elon Musk can get a massive tax handout that they don't need? Amendment 89 supports continued access to behavioral health care through Medicaid. This amendment requires states to stop implementation of the red tape requirements included in the bill if access to substance use disorder treatment services amongst low-income adults decreases. You heard my colleague, Representative Dean, next to me here, speaking in favor of this amendment, and rightfully so. She knows the benefit that this could bring. This would be determined by the number of available SUD providers in the state that participate in Medicaid, the geographical distance for beneficiaries to access a SUD provider that participates in Medicaid, and the rates of SUD treatment amongst low-income residents of the state. Republicans want us to believe that these new paperwork and red tape requirements won't impact treatment for addiction and behavioral health. But Medicaid is the single largest payer for behavioral health services. These red tape requirements will rip coverage away from millions of individuals struggling with addiction and behavioral health needs. If these Medicaid cuts are put in place, states will be forced to take on more financial burden and may shift resources away from critical, life-saving services, including prevention, treatment, and recovery. Additionally, most Medicaid enrollees struggle with substance use disorder and find their way to treatment after getting on Medicaid, not before. If a diagnosis is required before providing someone with access to Medicaid, then how do the undiagnosed ever get care? Under the Republican plan, they won't get access to substance use disorder treatment. Care will be delayed or never happen, and lives will be lost. This is a common-sense amendment to ensure that Medicaid cuts won't prevent our loved ones living with substance use disorder from accessing the treatment they need. My second amendment, Amendment 270, would only allow the repeal of EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and rescission of its unobligated funds to take effect after GAO certifies that it will not increase costs on consumers. This program was designed to help Americans who are struggling with their energy bills by leveraging billions of private sector dollars to support projects that will lower costs and create good-paying jobs. To do this, EPA tapped into nonprofit coalitions of experienced community-based lenders. The potential benefits are massive. Recent analysis from the University of New Hampshire estimated that these investments will result in $52 billion worth of energy cost savings for consumers over the next 20 years. Despite these major benefits to everyday Americans, this bill would continue Republicans' ideological crusade against the program to help offset the cost of tax cuts for billionaires. Let's be clear, there has been absolutely no evidence of fraud or criminality by grant recipients. In court this week, attorneys for the administration admitted that we're not accusing anybody of fraud and there aren't any particular instance of waste and abuse. This bill doubles down on the Republicans' longstanding policy objective of undermining the program, having sought its repeal on numerous occasions. At the moment, only $19 million of the original $27 billion remains unobligated, which is intended to be used to administer and conduct oversight of the grants. If Republicans were genuinely concerned about the program's risks for fraud, waste, and abuse, they would not be rescinding these oversight dollars. Americans are struggling with the cost of living. Energy bills, despite President Trump's promises, are going up. It's outrageous that Republicans would target funding and reduce energy bills at this time. So let's make certain we go forward, support these amendments in order, and defeat this ugly bill. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Tonko. Mr. Mannion, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you to the ranking member and members of the full committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and offer Amendment 156 for your consideration. This amendment is simple. It says none of the changes in the health title should go into effect unless the Congressional Budget Office can confirm they won't raise out-of-pocket health care costs for working families. That's it. That's the whole thing. And to me, it's just basic accountability. I represent New York's 22nd Congressional District, a true 50-50 district, Republicans and Democrats living side by side, and right now I'm hearing the same thing from all of them, fear. Fear that changes in this bill could jeopardize their ability to pay for their care, fear that their kids or aging parents will lose the services they depend on. Let me tell you about Betsy, a mom who has a child on the autism spectrum and has Tourette's syndrome. He has significant needs, and through Medicaid, he's been able to access therapists, medical providers, and a communication device that gives him a voice. And that's not an exaggeration. His device is literally how he speaks to the world, and through these services, her son has built independence. He's learning to thrive, and as Betsy put it, this is how he lets the world know that he's a fighter and he deserves to live a full, meaningful, and enriched life. But if we cut Medicaid services, what happens to families like Betsy's? What happens to a child who literally loses their voice? Because we can't take the time to understand the impact of this legislation. So this is a common sense amendment that ensures that we're not balancing the budgets on the backs of the families who can least afford it. In Central New York and the Mohawk Valley, we are common sense people. It's common sense to support this amendment. It's common sense to reject a $400 million gift from a state that sponsors organizations that carry out terrorism, potentially against our allies. It is common sense to investigate the creation of meme coins and stable coins to enrich those in positions of power and their families. I urge the committee to adopt this important amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Chair, my classmate. It's good to see you, and thank you for the opportunity to present amendments to this bill. For months, Republicans promised repeatedly that their budget would not affect Medicaid, would not make any cuts to Medicaid, and that no one would lose their Medicaid. It's the same promise Donald Trump made on the campaign trail among his countless other lies. Well, here we are about to bring one big, ugly bill to the floor, with this committee hiding behind closed doors in the dead of night when presenting the details of this harmful legislation. Republicans are trying to ram through a slew of dreadful policies that will weaken our country, economy, communities, and families everywhere. This bill is pure cruelty. Republicans and President Trump lied to people all over America, and millions will lose their Medicaid coverage. The CBO confirmed this. It is a fact. Therefore, my First Amendment strikes the provision limiting state-directed payments, which I know worries many of my Democratic and Republican colleagues alike. State-directed payments are a lifeline for hospitals, nursing homes, and other providers in our safety net that treat a high volume of Medicaid beneficiaries. Medicaid often reimburses providers at rates below the actual cost of care. In Florida, Medicaid repays providers at about 48 cents for every dollar spent to provide care. This is why states like Florida have these agreements in place to address the shortfalls for hospitals that operate on razor-thin margins and need help bridging that gap. The Republican bill before us today would hamstring states, ironically, most of them red, by taking away their ability to manage their programs effectively and removing needed flexibility. This will have a cascading effect. Providers will be harmed, then be forced to limit services, which negatively affects Medicaid patients. And where will the Medicaid patients turn? To the emergency room. And that, of course, hurts hospitals even more because it's the costliest point of entry into our healthcare system. This will make healthcare pricier and harder to find. In other words, working families pay for Republican tax cuts to the wealthiest by giving up their own health care. That's why my First Amendment strikes this provision so that the safety net hospitals in my community and the people they serve in my district don't suffer needlessly for the benefit of the wealthy. And this affects hospitals across the country, and many will close as a result of this change. Mark my words. Moving on, my Second Amendment is deeply personal to me because many of you know I'm a breast cancer survivor, and we have millions of other cancer survivors in this country. I know what it feels like to wake up every morning not knowing what the next scan will show, not knowing if I'd be there for my children's next birthday, or see them grow up, get married, and maybe have their own kids one day. And it shatters me to know that this bill will harm people who are grasping for hope, desperate to survive this terrible disease. My amendment prevents this horrible, ugly bill from taking effect until the HHS Secretary certifies that not one of its provisions harms cancer patients and their access to care. Over 10% of cancer survivors rely on Medicaid for their care, and more than 1/3 of children newly diagnosed with cancer in our country are enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP. Medicaid is a lifeline to so many cancer survivors, and they don't need any obstacles or uncertainty to accessing their care, nor do they need to struggle just to stay alive. Also, Republicans can stuff more big tax breaks into the pockets of big corporations and the super rich. Survivors who rely on Medicaid will die because of this bill. Full stop. It's shameful. You want to talk about saving taxpayer dollars? Then fund early screening. Fund treatment. Help prevent advanced stage cancer, because we all know that preventing diseases like cancer and catching it early, as I was able to, is far less costly than treating it when it has advanced and spread. Access to insurance saves lives and lowers costs. I know you know that, but you simply don't have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump and defend your constituents for fear he'll tweet a primary opponent for you. And spare me the excuse this bill only kicks off ineligible people from Medicaid. That is false, and you know it. This moment calls for courage, not self-interest. It requires a heart, not a headline. There are 110,000 people in my district who are at risk of losing their Medicaid health care under this terrible bill. A majority of them are children. Nearly 30,000 are seniors. And I'm up here I'm sorry, I've been here since the middle of the night, fighting for them. Why? Because Republicans turned their back on the people that you represent. You have to push this midnight madness because you're putting your constituents in dire situations, and you want to block them from defending themselves. And you want to ensure they can't by yanking their health care while they're sleeping. I know how important Medicaid is to so many Floridians and people across the country, and I swear I will defend it to my last breath. So I ask each of you, would you vote for a bill that could take away the care of a loved one facing cancer when they needed it most? Hide in the dark if you want, but history is watching, and the people that we all serve will remember how you answered. I yield back.
I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and ask Mr. Jackson if he would, there are 3 of us who attend prayer breakfast regularly with you. Would you like to invite other people to go tomorrow morning, Mr. Jackson? I give you a point of personal privilege.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am the bipartisan co-chair of the National Prayer Breakfast. I would like to invite all of my colleagues out for friendship, fellowship, and an exhibit of faith. Please join us tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. in the here in the members' dining room, and let us pray for the food we're about to receive, not the food that has left our table.
Thank you. Mr. Norman, do you have any questions? No questions. Mr. McGovern?
I don't have any questions. I support all of your amendments. You are like my heroes for lasting as long as you have and being here, because I think it's important to remind the American people that there's a lot in this bill. I mean, everything from the repeal of the tax on silencers to the issue about making sure that people get adequate health care, especially young kids when they're diagnosed with cancer. And again, I just think it's such a profoundly bad bill that is going to hurt so many people. And I think, we just need to make sure that the American people know that we're on their side. And so I thank all of you, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Scanlon?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you all for your willingness to tough it out here with us as we're now on hour 13, which is so much fun. But I really appreciate the attention and the care you've brought with your amendments, thoughtful amendments to try to improve this bad bill and to highlight the economic, the environmental, and even the existential harms that it's likely to cause the American people. Especially want to thank my sister in service to Southeastern Pennsylvania for the life-saving amendments that she has introduced to reverse cuts to substance use disorder services and to address this tax cut that would make it easier to purchase silencers for firearms. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Scott?
Sorry, I yield back.
Well, first of all, Madam Chair, Mr. Jackson, I appreciate the invitation and especially the optimism that we may be done by the time the prayer breakfast starts tomorrow. I would just point out that there's a lot that's been said about suppressors with modern printing, 3D technologies, everything else right now. You can go on Amazon and buy all the parts to make anything you want. So I think there's either way, it's unrealistic to think it can be stopped once the technology has reached the level that it has. And in many countries, it actually mandated, in many countries, it's my time, in many countries, it's actually mandated that you use a suppressor if you're gonna hunt. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
No questions, Madam Chair. Just again, gratitude to our colleagues for being here and for submitting your amendments, all of which, of course, we agree with and support. And I'll yield back.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam.
Mr. Griffiths.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I actually really love hearing from you. So
Well, you never know what I'm going to say. Today, I'm going to echo the chairwoman's comments and encourage everybody, whether it's this Thursday or any Thursday we're in session, to attend the bipartisan prayer breakfast. It really is a good group. But one thing that has not been mentioned yet is that for those of you like me who love to eat, one of the regulars provides breakfast every Thursday morning. So we have eggs and oatmeal and sausage and bacon and potatoes. It's good. It's a good time to get together, and reflecting that we all have losses from time to time. Today, of course, the loss of Jerry Conley. it's sometimes good to get together, not as adversaries, but just getting together as human beings who care for one another. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really do want to thank both all the members of this panel, the previous panels, and the people who are waiting to speak. Because I want to point out that because of all of my Democratic colleagues, we did prevent them from passing this bad rule in the dead of night. You have made sure that the sun is shining on this process. And you are, by the way, I think, the third panel, and ABC. There are nothing but great C's that I have heard in this. We have talked about corruption and the need to fight it, about having the courage of standing with your constituents, about cancer. And the fact that we can do something about it because we know what it feels like. Today of all days, we know what it feels like when you lose somebody to cancer. We've talked about the cruelty of the bill and the importance of care, which I think ties into the idea of the prayer breakfast. Care. Care for others, the elderly, those with mental health issues, those who need help with drug addiction. So thank you, this third panel, for enlightening us as to all of these subject areas. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. And I thank the panel for being with us. And there being no further questions, you're excused. And I will ask Ms. Berrigan, Ms. Randall, Mr. Larson, Mr. Whitesides, Mr. Caston, Mr. McGarvey, Ms. Trahan, and Mr. Danny Davis to come forward. If some of you will go down before you click. All right, here. I know some, but I don't know more. We're missing. Let me see. McGarvey.
All right, so we're going to shift away from Washington, D.C. and come back home. We want to check in on the weather. It is hot outside, Carlene.
It's hot.
It is hot, but I am not complaining.
You're
about
not complaining
the weather.
yet.
Not complaining.
Yeah, give it time.
Well, yeah, we have a full forecast, so that'll be the time.
Let's do the forecast.
Let's do the forecast. This is Majestic Storm with our forecast.
And a very good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm, and it is going to be a warm one today. We had some strong storms pass throughout the overnight hours. Those storms are gone, and now the sunshine is on the way. Today is going to be the warmest day out of our 7-day forecast. You can anticipate gradually clearing conditions, so some sunshine later on into the afternoon, plus those temperatures, they're rising to nearly 90 degrees today. So it is going to be a sunny and warm afternoon, but it's also going to be less humid because we have a cold front on the way. That front will eventually drop those temperatures down a little bit tomorrow, but it will also increase our winds. Heading into our holiday weekend, if you do have any plans for your Memorial Day weekend, whether you're heading out to the lake or you have plans to go boating, it's going to be fantastic. Monday may bring an opportunity for showers and thunderstorms. We'll get to that, but let's start with today. There's the rest of your Wednesday. You can see temperatures will be warmer than than where we topped off yesterday by 5 degrees, a high of 88. So nearing that 90-degree point for the Charlotte metro area. Want to say hello to everyone watching out there towards our mountain counties. A little bit cooler for you, but still enjoyable. We'll see a mix of upper 60s and low 70s. For the foothills, we'll see those mid to upper 60, mid to upper 80-degree temperatures, 85 degrees out there towards Morganton. Getting warm across the Charlotte metro area, 87 for Statesville, 88 today for Gastonia. And check this out, we could hit some low 90-degree temperatures today out towards the Chesterfield area. Now with the warmth today, you'll notice that those winds start to become a little bit breezy this afternoon. But notice as we progress throughout our Wednesday night and into Thursday, our winds, especially for the mountains, will really increase. Some of our winds could gust anywhere from 40 to even 50 miles an hour. And Thursday as a whole for everyone, I think will just be a windy day. For the Charlotte metro area, we could see some of those winds gusting up to around 30 miles an hour. So if you have something outside that might blow away or get damaged or tossed down the road, make sure it's all secure and tucked away. Now with that front that pushes through, it's a dry cold front. So it's going to pick up our winds, but back behind it, it's bringing in drier air. So that's why the humidity is going to be much less. Notice that drop in temperatures as well. Almost 90 degrees today. Tomorrow still warm, 83. And then as we're heading towards our Memorial Day weekend, temperatures will begin to fall into the 70s. Still very, very enjoyable. Next week, though, we'll hold on to those below average temperatures into the mid to upper 70s. Our average high is about 81 degrees. There's a look at our precipitation over the next 10 days. We won't have to worry about things really until Monday. So if you have plans for your Memorial Day, you're going to want to stay close to our team because we are tracking some opportunities for some rain showers Monday and Tuesday. Futurecast still looks fantastic for your Wednesday this afternoon. Again, it is going to be gorgeous. Lots of sunshine, enjoyable. If you want to grab the family, go for a bike ride, head out to the Greenway. We're going to be looking at very comfortable conditions. Then heading into our Thursday morning, it's going to be nice again. Again, not tracking really any major rain chances until next week. Here's a look at our Memorial Day weekend planner. You can see temperatures will be very enjoyable. Monday, about a 40% chance of seeing some showers and thunderstorms, though. There you go. Our 7-day forecast, really quite nice. If you're heading out to the Charlotte Knights game tonight, it's going to be nice for a bark in the park. Tomorrow for a Thursday, a high of 83 degrees. And then temperatures, they begin to slip into the 70s Friday and Saturday, but pretty agreeable weather for most people, especially if you're heading out to the Charlotte FC game or maybe the Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday. Monday is going to be the next day where we could see some active weather, so make sure you are staying close to our weather team, especially if you do plan to be out on the lake to be boating.
And that was Majestic Storm with the forecast.
All right, bring on the complaints.
I have no complaint. I was about to say, is Bark in the Park tonight? Is it Bark in the Park?
Bark in the Park is tonight at the Charlotte Knights. This is the Ghost Peppers, though.
Ghost Peppers, yeah, okay.
This is the Gastonia Ghost Peppers. They're having a doubleheader right now, so.
They are playing the Lexington Legends.
Yes.
So I gotta root for the Legends because Lexington is like 20 minutes away from my hometown.
Oh my
So
gosh.
by proximity, I have to root for
I thought you were just a High Point man. Now you gotta root for Lexington.
It's the triad. Like, okay, Charlie is technically the triad too, but the Piedmont triad. I gotta root for the Lexington Legends.
You hear that, Gastonia? Do you hear that?
Sorry. If you were playing Southern Maryland Blue Crabs.
Then we're all Ghost Peppers all
or
the way?
the Charleston Dirty Birds.
Yeah.
I will root for you, but
Okay.
I gotta root for the home team.
Okay.
Home team adjacent.
Home
Lexington.
team Jace.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's Bark in the Park at the Knights tonight, so I'm bringing
be a
Turkey
beautiful
out
night.
there and.
Turkey's the dog. By
Turkey's
the way.
the dog. Turkey's my weenie dog. It's gonna be hot.
But,
It's gonna be a warm one.
It is gonna be.
It'll be so much fun. But
it's gonna be
warm
fun. It's gonna be warm. Yeah. So and Turkey's gonna be all on you.
He's a furnace too.
Like a
He's
blanket.
14 pounds, but it's hot. It is hot on your lap. It is. He's gonna make me sweat.
All turkey. Well, y'all have fun. And
yeah.
Anybody who's out there at the game tonight, right now, the game starts at. I think this is.
This one started at 12:30.
12:30, so that game is underway, right? I thought the game's underway, but if you're going out there for the doubleheader a little later, do they play it back to back?
I believe so.
Okay,
There's
okay.
Maybe a little bit of a break, but.
But if you're out there right now, hey, look, make sure you hydrate. Yeah, wear a hat, sunscreen, stay hydrated, water, all of that, and have a good time. It's a beautiful day. All right. So should we go back to D.C.?
Sure.
Okay. So let's go back to Washington, D.C. Right now, this is a live look at the House Rules Committee. They are discussing and have been discussing for hours now President Donald Trump's agenda bill. Let's take a listen in.
Are on the verge of shutting their doors because of this bad bill. Just yesterday, President Trump even told your conference, don't F around with Medicaid. He seems to know what members on this committee aren't willing to face up to. That so many families like mine depend on Medicaid, which is why I've filed an amendment to prevent provisions in this bill from going to effect if this administration makes any cuts to Medicare or Medicaid. Beverly from Tacoma called my office telling me that losing Medicaid will literally kill her as she has multiple surgeries she needs to have this year. Another constituent, Kelly, is worried that her daughter will be homeless if she loses Medicaid coverage. Evangeline wrote me saying, as someone with a husband who is 83 years old, a kidney cancer survivor, and living with dementia, the importance of maintaining these healthcare services cannot be overstated. They're vital for seniors and those with chronic conditions to receive necessary medical support and assistance. It's not just Medicaid that's at risk. Millions stand to lose health coverage because the majority is not extending the ACA's enhanced premium tax credits, which my constituent Denise wrote me about, saying she has lupus and she won't be able to afford health insurance and treatment without those benefits. For the American people watching at home, because, Madam Chairwoman, despite your attempts to deceive the American people by beginning this meeting in the middle of the night, know that they are still watching this majority's every single move. And the bottom line is that this bill will make your air dirtier, your water filthy, and dismantle the healthcare system so that when you inevitably have health complications from all this increased pollution, you won't even be able to afford treatment. All so that Republicans can finance trillions of dollars in tax cuts for wealthy and well-connected people. While President Trump and his friends get jets and giveaways, he wants Americans to be forced to choose between feeding their families and paying for prescriptions. I won't stand by and watch it happen. I urge the members of this committee to follow the president's direction to protect and preserve Medicaid, stand up for health care access and the hospitals in your communities, and support my amendment. These cuts to Medicaid are just the beginning of harmful provisions in this bill that I'm concerned will hurt my neighbors back home and hurt all of your neighbors. On behalf of the 27,000 federal employees I represent, I'm incredibly concerned that this bill would steal their retirement benefits and strip away other protections. That's why I have also got an amendment to prevent a provision that would chill the reporting and appeal process with the Merit Systems Protection Board by requiring them to spend several hundreds of dollars on fees from going into effect. Our government cannot function without a strong, healthy federal workforce and their ability to approve Social Security benefits, to work in our national forests, to protect against fire, and to protect our national defense is essential. We're seeing already how gutting agencies is harmful to critical infrastructure and tribal priorities in the Pacific Northwest. That's why I'm also offering several additional amendments to ensure proper staffing at NOAA, force the administration to release bipartisan infrastructure law funding appropriated by Congress, require tribal consultation, and increase funding for critical tribal education programs. Unfortunately, in committee, my Republican colleagues seem to be scared to even engage in conversation or debate on this bill or any of my amendments. So that's why I'm back here in front of the Rules Committee asking if any Republicans here are willing to speak up and defend the terrible cuts included in this bill. And if you also aren't able to find it in you to speak up about these cuts, that I urge you to make my amendments in order, and let's take it to the House floor. Thank you.
I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and say, I thought members could see from the last panel and from the way I've conducted this meeting that I'm trying to be very bipartisan and to respect everybody who's here. I generally do that. I hope that's what's coming across. So I ask people to see that we try to be a role model here in being bipartisan and not to attack members personally. We can disagree on policy, but we don't need to attack each other personally. Mr. Larson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and let me thank you for your perseverance, your patience, and your practical application of getting through this process. Let me also commend my colleagues on the Democratic side for their persistence in making the public fully aware that all legislation has consequences. I have an amendment that's focus is on economic development, it's on tax cuts, and just happens to be the nation's #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly and the nation's #1 anti-poverty program for children. And Congress has enacted to enhance this program in over 50 years. Richard Nixon was President of the United States the last time that Social Security was enhanced. And yet it's Social Security that at its heart demonstrates the genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and also the Congress to put in place a plan that would be the safety net for entrepreneurialism and capitalism. How? By making sure that every congressional district and the people within those districts in difficult times, whether in retirement or whether through no fault of their own there were layoffs, that people were able to continue to receive a payment. No one gets wealthy on Social Security, you all know that. But it is able to sustain families during difficult time. And the shame here is that these are very difficult times in post-pandemic and now in this inflationary, global inflationary period that we're going through as well. People's kitchen table discussions are, how are we going to do this? And here's the startling fact, and I think every member probably knows this on both sides of the aisle. 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. On average, and you're blessed here in this committee, and especially on the Republican side, the average Social Security amount of money that goes to every district monthly, is in excess of $200 million. In the case here, it's over $300 million. That's the good news. The bad news is it hasn't been adjusted in more than 50 years. Imagine how the people in all of our districts feel when they get these statistics. Now, I give every member of Congress a little card, and on that card it demonstrates not only how much people get in retirement, but what spouses, what widows, what dependent children, and disability, another thing we don't mention enough about Social Security. I come from an insurance center of the world. And, you know, the administrative costs for insurance companies run anywhere between 16 and 28%. And we have some damn good insurance companies in Hartford, Connecticut. But Social Security manages the largest insurance program in the country, maybe the world. And it does so at under 1% administrative costs. And to see the closing of regional offices, the shutting down of work so that people aren't able to actually talk to a human being, you're all good people. You all have the same kind of constituents that we have. I know, Madam Chairman, that people like us, or at least my age, want to be able to talk to a human being. Don't want to go through press button number 1, press button number 2, press button number 3, and you're lucky if you ever get to talk to anybody. So here is something that has to be enhanced, that improves the whole economy,
gives a tax cut, a real tax cut, to more than 23 million Americans. There should be no double taxation of Social Security, and yet there is. So I implore and ask your help to pass this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Mr. Whiteside, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm George Whitesides, a new congressional representative for California's 27th Congressional District. I find it amazing that we are working on what may be the most expensive bill that the nation has ever seen and putting it through Congress in this way, but that's for another time. I'm here because I thought it was important to bring the voices of our district to this debate. I want to start by talking about what would happen if we do not pass this bill. First, for folks in my area, if we don't pass this bill, most people would actually get a tax cut. That's because this bill does not fully fix the state and local tax deduction problem that President Trump created in his first term. If we don't pass this bill, then we won't add $3.8 trillion to our national debt. We won't saddle our children and our grandchildren with our own irresponsibility. If we don't pass this bill, then we won't cause 14 million Americans to lose their health insurance coverage and millions more who will see their health care costs increase. We won't hurt local hospitals like the Antelope Valley Hospital or Palmdale Regional or Henry Mayo Hospital in my district. We won't cause emergency rooms to become even more crowded. If we don't pass this bill, then we won't leave millions of Americans, millions of children, without the ability to put food on the table. The bottom line is that this bill threatens the most basic needs that Americans rely on. People want us to be focused, instead, on lowering their everyday costs and growing jobs. I put forward 2 amendments to this bill that would cut costs and help grow jobs. The first amendment would help folks in my area who've been devastated by the Chiquita Canyon landfill. That's number 214, ma'am. The second, number 218, would preserve the tax incentives for hydrogen, one of the industries of the future that this bill would catastrophically damage if passed. Let's be clear, these clean energy tax credits are not frivolous spending. They are strategic investments that are already yielding tangible benefits across our nation. Since their passage, we've seen roughly $500 billion in new clean energy project announcements and more than 500,000 new jobs created. This isn't not just about environmental policy. It's about turbocharging American manufacturing, creating good-paying jobs, and lowering energy costs for families. In fact, if we repeal all of the clean energy tax credits, the average American family will see their energy bills increase. Every dollar of federal investment is stimulating $5 to $6 in private investment. That's a powerful engine of economic growth, not a drain on our treasury. Hydrogen in particular is not just another fuel, it's a game changer, Madam Chair. It's the critical link to decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors that traditional renewables struggle to address, like heavy-duty trucking, steel manufacturing, and cement production. These are the industries that employ millions of Americans and are foundational to our economy. Eliminating these hydrogen tax credits would be a catastrophic mistake. It would devastate projects already underway across the country, like the Arches Hydrogen Hub in my district. It would stifle innovation, cede our leadership in this burgeoning global market to competitors like China, Europe, the Middle East, Australia. They're not letting up. They're heavily investing in their own clean hydrogen capabilities. Estimates show that reaching our target of 10 million tons of hydrogen by 2030 could unlock up to $240 billion in investments and create over 200,000 new jobs. These are not mere projections. They are opportunities waiting to be seized. To pull the rug out from under these investments now would be to undermine our future. It would signal to investors that America is not a reliable partner, chilling future domestic and international investment. We'll raise energy costs for American households, stifling innovation, increasing pollution, and putting a meaningful portion of $500 billion of new manufacturing at risk. Let's remember, many of these investments are landing in states represented by both Republicans and Democrats. To your point, Madam Chair, about bipartisanship, demonstrating the widespread economic benefit. This should not be a partisan issue. It is an issue of American competitiveness and prosperity. This bill hurts our future. For folks in my district, it raises their costs, cuts their health care, mortgages the kids' future, kills new jobs, hurts our planet. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Keston, welcome to the Rules Committee again.
Pleasure to be back, Madam Chair, Ranking Member, members. I'm here in support of 4 separate amendments. Number 376 corrects a conflict in this bill between the bill and current law, specifically Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act, which requires that any new natural gas export facility has to be in the public interest. That law is contradicted by the pay-to-play provision in Section 41004, which says that a developer who pays the lesser of $10 million or 1% of construction costs receives automatic approval, their review is not completed in an expedited timeline. My amendment fixes this section by clarifying that the approval of any new LNG facility not associated with an existing free trade agreement has to get a prior determination by the Secretary of Energy that the project is in the public interest, consistent with an analysis that was just done by the DOE on a separate facility last year. That analysis found that new LNG facilities would raise domestic natural gas prices, makes sense, tighten domestic supply, price goes up, would not facilitate national security since new exports flow predominantly to commodity brokers and U.S. adversaries in Asia, and it also quantified the massive climate risks created by those facilities. Now, I realize that some of my Republican colleagues don't believe in climate change, and I also realize that the fossil fuel industry prefers higher fuel prices. But if you hold those views, I'd ask you please to consider our national security. Gas demand has flattened in Europe. It's peaked in Japan. It's expected to flatten in South Korea by 2030. China is now the world's largest importer. It is in China's national interest that we send them our natural gas. It is not in ours. Amendment 380 restores the appropriated funding from the Inflation Reduction Act for electric transmission and offshore wind. This amendment is necessary to ensure that American homeowners and businesses continue to have access to affordable and reliable electricity. Over the last decade, U.S. coal demand has fallen by over 50%, 50. Oil demand is flat over the same time period. Natural gas is losing market share. That transition is the result of market forces because fossil-fired plants can't compete on the margin with plants that don't pay for fuel, and markets favor cheaper energy. Now, a company that's losing market share generally has 2 choices. They can change or they can go bankrupt. The fossil industry's taken a third path: persuade Congress to block construction of assets that would expose them to competition. So a bill that repeals incentives to build transmission is a bill that sides with the economic losers. And I want to point out, this is not just about markets, because as companies consider whether they're going to build their next factory in the U.S., we don't want them to wonder whether our grid can handle the load. And when extreme weather knocks out the part of the grid that serves your town, I want to make sure that there's a redundant transmission path available to ensure that your family stays safe. So we need those back. Amendment 385 would reinstate incentives for cleaner transportation options and charging facilities. It also includes legislation I've introduced with Representative Matsui to spur innovation in the U.S. automotive sector. Let's talk about global, not U.S., global automotive markets. More than 25% of all cars sold this year are electric. That number is projected to rise to 40% by 2030. China now produces more than 60% of the world's electric cars and 80% of the batteries that power them. The EV demand is not because the world got woke, except in the sense that you've got to be damn close to comatose to prefer a car that costs more to fuel, more to maintain, and has crappier acceleration. This bill is not going to change those trends. It simply determines whether or not we cede control of that growing market to the Chinese. So if you count yourself among the so-called America First movement, this amendment is for you. Finally, Amendment 386 would strike Section 50003 to ensure that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, has the funding necessary to do their job. As drafted, that section would cut CFPB's funding by 70%. Now recall that the CFPB was created by the Dodd-Frank Act in response to the 2008 financial crisis. That crisis was driven because we had this financial regulatory system created in the 1930s where financial firms were regulated according to their designations, are you a bank, are you a thrift, are you an insurance company, et cetera, rather than by their activities. And as financial markets evolved, that left regulators with conflicting and frequently incompatible supervisory responsibilities. That weak supervision caused risk to migrate outside of the traditional banking system, ultimately landing on taxpayers and consumers, and so the 2008 financial crisis came. Congress created the CFPB to ensure that wouldn't happen again, and it has been wildly effective. It has returned more than 21 billion, the B dollars in relief, to 205 million Americans. But even that understates the benefit, because a cop on the corner stops more crime than he catches just by his presence. Defunding the police force will cost us a lot more than the 21 billion that they've already recovered. And the need for this particular cop is growing as the CFPB is the primary regulator of non-bank financial technology companies. That category will soon include Elon Musk's new platform, X Money. Now, I don't know if you know who Elon Musk is, but the more I learn about him, the less I like him. Up until recently, he was a special government employee who embedded people without proper security clearances in our Treasury payment system with read and write access, is now suspected to have private confidential information about the income, expenses, and bank routing numbers of every American taxpayer. He's an active supporter of neo-Nazis in Germany and white supremacists in South Africa, and owns several companies that have economic ties to the Chinese Communist Party. I hope you share my concern that that individual should be closely monitored.
Mr. Caston, your time is over.
I encourage support for all 4 amendments.
Mr. Caston. Ms. Budzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this opportunity, and thank you to Ranking Member McGovern. I'm here to testify today in support of Amendment Number 216, which is intended to make high-speed internet access more affordable. I want to also just take a moment, though, to say that I'm in part here to stand up for my constituents, that there are some really damaging provisions within this bill that are going to impact them directly. 19,000 of my constituents are going to see over $1,000 increase in their premiums for health care. 28,000 of my constituents are going to lose health care coverage, and additionally 15,000 families are going to lose access to SNAP, and many of those families are families that have children in those homes. So I just wanted to say that I'm speaking on behalf of this amendment, which gets to affordability, which I think is a bipartisan issue that we all want to address, but I would be remiss if I didn't stand up and speak out for the constituent impact that's going to be on these health care and SNAP provisions as well. My amendment would lower costs, though, for working families by using a small portion of the revenue from Spectrum auctions to reestablish a broadband affordability program like the Affordable Connectivity Program. Right now, this is what the American people need. This is what rural America needs. But instead of policies to lower costs and make life more affordable, the President has entangled us in expensive trade wars. Moving forward with this bill will raise prices. In fact, these trade games could cost the average American family up to $4,000 more per year. That is $4,000 to many folks that simply just do not have that money in their pocketbooks. My amendment introduces a measure of fairness into this otherwise harmful bill. This simple amendment puts working families first. Spectrum, the invisible radio frequencies that carry our wireless signals, is a limited public resource. The proceeds from auctioning it off should be reinvested in the public good, not to offset tax cuts for billionaires. Let's be clear, broadband is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Families rely on it to pay bills, do homework, and earn a living. Yet the high cost of service remains the #1 barrier to staying connected. A recent survey found that nearly 2/3 of adults saw their internet bills rise over the past year. 1 in 5 said rising prices forced them to downgrade, switch, or cancel service altogether. Every time a family is pushed offline because of cost, we fall behind as a country. The Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, was a proven solution that brought millions of Americans online. But despite its success, Republicans allowed its funding to lapse last year. Nearly 23 million households rely on ACP, including 78,000 households in my congressional district in Illinois alone. When the program expired, many saw their internet bills spike overnight, and those who couldn't afford to pay were cut off entirely. This was just the beginning of the wave of Republican-led price hikes that continue to hit working families. Now the President wants to unilaterally repeal the Digital Equity Act, the clawback funding Congress appropriated to implement it. These programs were designed to help seniors, veterans, rural residents, and people with disabilities get the tools and training they need to get online. Republicans are also attempting to eliminate the requirement under the BEAD program that internet service providers offer affordable plans, despite the fact that these networks are built with taxpayer dollars. Just this month, Senate Republicans voted to permanently repeal an FCC program that would provide Wi-Fi hotspots to school children. We've seen what these choices lead to, kids doing homework in fast food parking lots or outside of libraries, like what we saw during the pandemic, and this is just quite simply unacceptable. We have made progress in closing the digital divide, but it's critical that we finish this job. Study after study confirms that cost is the biggest barrier to broadband access. Any serious solution we must tackle that head on. My amendment does just that. It delivers real relief to working families already struggling under President Trump's price hikes. I urge my colleagues to support this, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Ms. Trahan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam. Is this on? Yes. Madam Chair, I'm offering Amendment 307 to... Oh, got it. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm offering Amendment 307 to safeguard access to IVF for millions of women who rely on it to start their families. And while I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to offer this amendment, as well as this committee's perseverance, there is nothing bipartisan or transparent about this process when so much of the debate over this bill happened in the middle of the night while most Americans were sleeping. It was a blatant attempt to prevent folks from tuning in, from hearing the contents of this disastrous bill, but people are watching. They're seeing what you're trying to do, and they're going to see how you vote on this amendment, which would simply require that the Secretary of Health and Human Services certifies that the GOP's reconciliation bill does not reduce or restrict state Medicaid programs from covering infertility treatment, because the ability to start a family should never be a privilege reserved only for the wealthy. Like so many couples across the country, my husband and I turned to IVF to have our girls. I know the pain of hearing that pregnancy might not happen. I know the silent heartbreak, the financial strain, and yes, the overwhelming joy when, thanks to modern medicine, I was finally able to hold my children in my arms. Every woman deserves that chance. President Trump recently called himself the father of IVF and claimed he wants to make it easier for women to have children. But actions speak louder than words. Just last month, this administration eliminated the CDC's reproductive technology surveillance and research team, the very experts who tracked IVF outcomes and access for over 30 years. Without that data, we're flying blind. And now, House Republicans are threatening deep cuts to Medicaid, the very program that could make IVF accessible to working families. Today, most Medicaid programs don't cover IVF. And for the majority of Americans without insurance coverage, IVF, which can cost upwards of $15,000 per cycle, is simply out of reach. If Republicans succeed in cutting Medicaid even further, that dream won't just remain out of reach, it will disappear completely. It will be women living paycheck to paycheck, women in rural areas, women of color, the very women already facing the steepest barriers to care, who will suffer the most. This amendment is about more than reproductive technology. It's about whether we believe that every woman, no matter her income, her zip code, or insurance status, deserves a fair shot at motherhood. Unfortunately, the consequences of this bill don't stop at IVF. Every one of us here has heard stories from our constituents, mothers, daughters, families, about how hard it is to access the care that they need. And yet, this bill, crafted behind closed doors by Republicans in this chamber and considered here in the dead of night, will only deepen that crisis. At a time when the United States ranks last in maternal mortality among industrialized nations, when hospitals are closing and care is harder to find, this bill pours gasoline on a fire that is already raging. Cutting Medicaid doesn't just mean cutting coverage. It means cutting off care to women when they are most vulnerable. In my district, those failures are real. In 2023, the only maternity ward in the western part of my district closed due to staffing shortages. Then the collapse of Steward Healthcare forced 2 more hospitals to shut down, including one that served as the primary provider for thousands of families. These aren't hypotheticals. These are closed doors, darkened hallways, delivery rooms that will never welcome a newborn again. According to the March of Dimes, 1 in 25 obstetric units has closed in just the last 2 years. Over 1,100 counties in America are now maternity care deserts, with no hospital, no OB, no place to give birth safely. And now this bill proposes gutting the program that keeps what little is left afloat, Medicaid. If we do that, we won't just lose coverage, we'll lose hospitals, we'll lose doctors, and we'll lose lives. So to my colleagues, especially those who claim to support IVF, who care about mothers and family values, I just ask you to prove it. Support this amendment to protect IVF access. Reject the deep cuts to Medicaid in this bill to protect the hospitals, doctors, and services that make motherhood possible in the first place. Because if you are serious about being pro-family, pro-mother, and pro-life, then you must be serious about protecting Medicaid. And you must be honest about what's at stake. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member. The good book teaches us to care for the least among us. My 4 amendments do just that. For parents, child care is the work-related expense. My amendment would reimburse working parents up to $8,000 in child care costs. The meager current maximum of $1,200 was set at the turn of the century. Now the cost of center-based care for 2 children is more than the average rent in all 50 states. Yet the Republican bill fails to directly help struggling parents with the crushing burden of child care. Instead, the bill gives $731 million to businesses and ignores the tens of millions of working parents whose employers will never offer child care. And the small temporary $500 bump in the child tax credit excludes the poorest parents and is dwarfed by the $8,000 in relief offered by my amendment. If Republicans want parents to work, then please accept my amendment. The second amendment would provide life-changing help to hard-working, rent-burdened Americans earning up to $100,000. Rent unaffordability is at an all-time high, with about half of all renters being cost-burdened, especially extremely low-income households, seniors, and rural Americans. My amendment would create a new tax credit for low and middle income renters that would cover a percentage of the gap between 30% of their adjusted gross income and their actual rent. For renters earning less than $25,000, the credit would cover the entire 30% income to rent gap and then phase out. The Republican bill offers nothing to help struggling renters. Supporting my amendment would provide financial relief to thousands of individuals so that they can thrive without fear of eviction. My third amendment would provide a tax cut to tens of millions of low-income workers by enhancing the Earned Income Tax Credit. The EITC is a powerful tool to reduce poverty. Although the Republican bill gives an increased EITC for some Purple Heart recipients, it ignores the vast majority of individual workers. Workers aged 65 and older represent one of the fastest growing groups in our labor force. Millions of people, of workers, receiving and not receiving. We would also lower the eligibility age to 19 while enhancing the credit for all childless workers. Further, my amendment would include important flexibilities for foster and homeless workers, homeless youth. If the GOP bill can spend $211 billion on tax breaks for wealthy heirs, surely it can help vulnerable workers who are young, old, single, homeless, or foster youth. Finally, my Fourth Amendment would strike the permanent tax hike on foundations that would rip $15.8 billion in charitable aid from our communities, aid that supports food banks, houses of faith, veterans, disaster relief, rural health care, emergency assistance during economic downturns, and other critical needs. Policies that hurt foundations reduce grant-making to charitable nonprofits across the country. Forefront, the Association of Grant Makers for the state of Illinois, estimates that the proposed tax increase on private foundations would result in $168 million less in grants made to Illinois nonprofits each year. Charitable giving represents the best in American generosity and the exact time when charitable giving and philanthropy are needed the most to offset the cuts in federal investment. Congress must strike this charity-reducing provision. Government should help people, not harm them. My amendments would help lift the burdens of tens of millions of families and workers, as well as promote charitable service. I thank you, Madam Chairman, and yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Norman, you have any questions? Mr. McGovern.
I just want to say to all of you, thank you, thank you, thank you for not giving in and for staying the course and fighting for your constituents, for the people of this country. Those of us on the Democratic side of the Rules Committee are grateful that you're here, and I know the American people are grateful that you are here. So, again, thanks so much. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. There being no, any of my colleagues, other colleagues, okay. Thank you all very much. You're now excused. Have another list? Okay. Yeah, how to pronounce that one. Mr. Schweikert, Mr. Oshevsky, Mr. Garcia, Ms. Sykes, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Simon, Mr. McGarvey, Ms. Gillen. And if you all would come down this way so we can spread out, if you don't mind. Would you mind moving that direction so people can get by?
We can fill in.
So we can fill up here. Yeah, just go down to the end, okay? It makes it a little bit easier to fill in. Get over that way. You're going to be first, so it doesn't matter where you sit.
Just trying to get you all the way to the right.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think you're one of the people I like.
And that way you don't have room for your charts.
All right, is there an extra chair for me?
There we go, there we go.
Fun of my charts.
Can I sit in this chair, perhaps? I'm on the panel.
Do we have too many?
Is there not another chair?
Oh,
Certainly, if you can get a chair in there. We got 9.
we didn't call Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, you will be in the next group.
Not mine.
You're not in this group, Mr. Johnson. Okay? Okay, Mr. Schweikert, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and to members of the committee. I'm really impressed. I hope you're all very well caffeinated. Madam Chair, members, I'm actually trying to do something honest and unique here. The 2 pieces of legislation I have preliminary CBO scores that reach $2 trillion. $2 trillion in offsets and savings over the next 10 years. They're both morally, economically, quite rational. They do good things. The problem is they take on big concerns that often scare the crap out of all of us. but they're the right thing. So let's do the first one. I can do it fairly quickly. For anyone that's been here for a while, you've been tracking the MedPAC reports for the last half a decade, basically making it very clear that we have a major problem in Medicare Advantage and its offsets. As you saw last night, there was another scandal that broke in the media and potentially another set of indictments and criminal activities coming. So what happens when those of us who want the incentives of a system that manages care but benefits by helping our brothers and sisters, particularly in the seniors with their earned benefits, be healthier, that the insurers who manage it make their profit by having the population be healthier and not by constantly scoring that population as sicker and as margins. And if, for those of you from the all the way back to the Obama years, let alone the Biden years, which that's what this one was written, they demonstrate that today Medicare Advantage is coming in at 120% of fee-for-service. The design was supposed to be at 95%. Just divide that by the money and then do it over the decade. That there is almost $1.5 trillion. We have introduced, oh, sorry, there goes when it happens you use binders. Piece of legislation has already been introduced, and we've turned it into an amendment for your consideration, Madam Chair, that would, over the decade, for a pilot program, but also become self-executing, realign the incentives in Medicare Advantage to actually fixate on helping populations be healthier than what is today scamming the system. There's about 20, 25 Democrats that a couple of weeks ago wrote a letter basically demanding something similar to this model. There's those of us as Republicans have spent almost a year with healthcare economists. Speaker's credit, he let me hire a healthcare PhD for the Joint Economic Republicans. This isn't Republican or Democrat, it's good policy. And just that bill, our preliminary score is $1.84 trillion. If you want to do amazing things to help this country and do the right thing, there are these handful of policy opportunities that don't necessarily break down left and right. They're just great math, great delivery of services, and alignment of incentives. Madam Chair, the second bill is one that we've worked on for about a year. Matter of fact, the young woman sitting in the back who abandoned me was actually the primary author of this, and it's a talent-based immigration bill. Within it, we added the president's golden visas, some other things. This one, our preliminary score is $174 billion over 10, but in the second decade, it makes amazing differences because we do something insane in this country. We educate populations and then we send them to their home countries to compete with us. Why would we do that? If we know we have, the models here are saying we're going to have these sorts of GDP growth. Almost none of my economists can hit that GDP number without a major change in our demographics. And that demographics is, how do you fight with the rest of the world who's trying to steal our smart people? We need to enter in the game. And it turns out a STEM-based, talent-based immigration system is one of the most elegant ways for productivity, for new inventions, and also for tax receipts and GDP growth. Both of these are written more by economists than politicians. We wanted to get the alignment of the actual math together instead of some of the, forgive me, insane things I've heard people say behind the microphones here today, where it's the political wedge for the next campaign. How about for once we get the alignment of the economics and the math and do good things? And those are my pitch. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schweikert. Mr. Olszewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the committee member, Ranking Member McGovern. I appreciate the opportunity. Before I begin, I wanted to just address a comment earlier from the gentleman and our colleague from South Carolina. To be clear, the government is not my God. Jesus is my God. So just want to be clear that Democrats, we actually have faith too, and I'm proud to sort of wear that and share that with all of you. I also deeply believe in the value of work. And so you and hopefully your colleagues will love my amendment today because it's an indisputable fact. The more people that have access to health care, the better it is for everyone. It's better for families, it's better for communities, it's better for businesses. There are a lot of reasons to vote against the reconciliation bill before you, It adds trillions to the federal deficit to fund tax breaks for Americans who need them least. It does nothing for working-class Americans to lower costs in any real way. It will increase health care costs for millions of Americans, for those lucky enough to still have health care coverage. The bill proposes sweeping changes to Medicaid to help offset these tax breaks for wealthy individuals and large corporations. One such change is new work requirements that would result in millions of Americans losing their health coverage entirely. Hundreds of millions of Americans are set to hundreds of Americans will literally lose their lives, according to the Center for American Progress. These changes won't even achieve the savings that we believe our Republican colleagues think they will. That's because nearly everyone with Medicaid coverage who's able to work already is. 92% of adult Medicaid enrollees are either already working, in school, or serving as a caretaker, or unable to work due to illness or disability. Most are working low-wage, hourly, or seasonal jobs in vital industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, or agriculture that don't offer employer-sponsored healthcare. So it was no surprise that when states began implementing work requirements, employment did not go up. Instead, the arduous paperwork meant that even more who were working or should have been exempt lost their coverage anyways. These are not people who are gaming the system. These are honest, hardworking people just trying to get by. But if our Republican colleagues insist on implementing new work requirements, we should also insist that work is actually available. Anyone who needs a job to satisfy these misguided work requirements should be able to find one. So I want to connect Americans to work. I know that you all do too. For that reason, I'm introducing Amendment 151. My amendment requires the Secretary of Labor to establish a national employment placement program that provides a broad range of public and private employment opportunities. And under the amendment, anyone seeking employment within the job program will be exempt from Medicaid work requirements. Americans who are seeking work in good faith will keep their health care coverage. The amendment empowers the Secretary to create the program and its operation, to define acting in good faith, to determine the scope of the placement program, and all other relevant details. The amendment is reasonable. It simply says, before you take health care away from able-bodied constituents, let's make sure they actually have access to a job. Madam Chair, I've been here since early this morning, and I want to commend you for the respect and the decorum that you are keeping in this meeting, and I mean that sincerely. So thank you for the ways in which you're conducting this meeting. I also heard you mention, though, that you want to operate in a bipartisan fashion. Bipartisanship requires consensus and agreement. So, in that spirit, I will say that I offer one of over 500 amendments that this committee can adopt, can take up. I challenge the committee to consider a dozen or two really good ideas that have been presented to at least truly move forward in that spirit of bipartisanship. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity, and I yield back.
We did have bipartisan votes in the committee, so maybe you'd like to vote for the bill and make it bipartisan. Thank you. Let me see. Mr. Garcia.
Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to discuss the amendments that I submitted, numbers 112 and 420. Amendment 112 eliminates a provision that cancels unobligated funding from the Neighborhood Access and Equity Program. This amendment is not explicitly about the devastating Medicaid cuts that the majority is trying to move forward, kicking millions of Americans off their health care, nor is it about the billions of dollars in cuts to food assistance that families rely on to put food on the table. This amendment is about the way people move from point A to point B safely. It's about the glue that enables people in urban and rural districts alike to actually get their health care appointments or go to the store for groceries. And if the majority is set on imposing strict work requirements as a condition for receiving Medicaid and SNAP benefits, they should be supporting my amendment. Why? Because the NAE program helps people get to and from their jobs.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Right now, you're watching live here in Washington, D.C., as there's a Senate hearing on AI deep fakes. Country music singer Martina McBride is expected to be there. We haven't seen her, but she's listed to be there. So right now, you're looking at Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina. He is speaking. Let's listen in to this hearing.
America must remain the innovation leader in the world. And I believe that John Squires will bring the leadership to the USPTO to make sure that we accomplish that end. I strongly support his nomination, and I look forward to asking him a number of questions. And by the way, to the little baby, I will tell you all what I've said to others. As a grandfather and a father of 2 kids, nothing is more beautiful than the sound of someone else's baby crying. I fully support Mr. Squires' nomination.
Senator Tillis, thank you. Now Senator Moody.
Thank you. And I'm now, as one of 2 senators who are moms of kids in school, I think it's also a good distraction tactic for mothers, because all I wanted to do was run over there. So my Democrat colleagues, be on notice if you ever want to distract us, pack the room with babies. Good morning. It is my honor to be here today to introduce President Trump's nominee to be the next director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, Joseph Edlow. Mr. Edlow's nomination comes in an extremely critical time in our nation's history. As Florida's Attorney General, I sat aghast as one of the first actions of Biden and his administration was to tell our local and state officers to stop, that there will be no more detainers and that they were to just release everyone here committing crimes back into our communities. They then at one point started taking people that were finishing federal prison sentences, and instead of deporting them back home as had always been traditionally done, pushing them back into our communities. And as the borders were open and mass quotas were installed in terms of pushing people into our interior that were barely vetted, and as new programs were developed to fly people straight here, barely vetted, it became abundantly clear as we saw the aftermath and consequences of that, that a strong vetting system, indeed a strong USCIS and someone at the helm, was critically important to this nation's security and indeed our families' securities. We have experienced over the last 4 years watching millions, some say upwards to 20, but at least 11 million people fled this country. We don't know who they are. We don't know in many cases their criminal backgrounds, although we're figuring that out now, and now we see why it is so important that it wasn't that we just needed to seize operational control of the border, and I'm so grateful for President Trump for doing that. It is now so important that our legal immigration system function as it was meant to, and that is screen and vet and guarantee that the safeguards and laws we put in place to make sure those that are coming here are coming because they want to add and contribute to this country. And they do so legally. It is so important we have someone at the helm to make sure that happens. The Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is responsible for leading the charge to screen and vet those coming to our country legally, and I know Joseph Edlow is the right man for the job. In fact, he's already done the job. He graduated law school and began his legal career as an associate attorney. Mr. Edlow joined U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and in 2008, as Assistant Chief Counsel in Baltimore Office of Chief Counsel, he litigated removal matters and handled every type of immigration case within the jurisdiction of that court. In 2015, Mr. Edlow then worked in the House of Representatives, first as counsel, focusing on immigration, and then for the House Judiciary Committee, Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security. As counsel, he worked on legislative and policy matters related to immigration enforcement and criminal immigration law. In 2018, he joined the Department of Justice as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General, where he was responsible for DOJ's regulatory agenda for all immigration matters. And in 2019, he became Chief Counsel for USCIS, later serving as Deputy Director for Policy, and then as Acting Director. I cannot think of anyone more qualified to take on this job. And in fact, putting people in these roles who did not have that type of experience or expertise would be dangerous for the country at this moment in time. And given his extensive experience, I have no doubt that he will do an excellent job as the next director of USCIS. And after my conversation and my meeting with him, I'm even more convinced that he will hit the ground running on day one and do what we have to do right now, working with President Trump to clean up the mess of the last administration and indeed deliver an immigration system that is meant to work as the people intended. He has my full support. I hope my colleagues will feel the same, and it is my honor to introduce Mr. Joseph Edlow.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Moody. Will the nominees please come to the table and don't sit down because I want to offer oath.
We want to shift away to from this hearing back over here, staying in Washington, D.C., where House Republican leaders are racing to drag a sweeping bill for President Donald Trump's agenda across the finish line, even as some holdouts are dug in and key issues remain unresolved. This is the House Rules Committee. They have been debating for hours now on that multi-trillion-dollar domestic policy package. Started around 1 a.m. this morning. So let's take a listen into where they are now and what they are discussing.
Madam Chair, I heard one of the members of this panel, one of the Republican members, say that if you have your health, you're pretty rich. Unfortunately, this bill will bankrupt people all over the country in more ways than one. And I also heard some Republican members on this committee talk about the value of work. Well, here's an interesting fact for all of you. The #1 employer in Ohio's 13th congressional district, our #1 employers are healthcare systems. And I can guarantee you, if this bill were go forward, you would be putting people out of work. Let me say that again. You would be putting people out of work in Ohio's 13th congressional district. The nearly 30,000 people who work for our hospital systems, who rely upon the Medicaid program to reimburse hospitals for care, will be jeopardized. Their jobs and their livelihoods would be jeopardized. So not only is this a matter of decreased care in my community, you are going to put people out on the streets, impoverish them, and decimate our local community. That is the reason why I was willing to be up all night and stay here for hours to testify on my community, because we cannot afford this bill. Additionally, as it stands, this bill moves to defund Planned Parenthood, wiping out access to reproductive health care for at least 20,000 Ohioans. With my amendment, with one of my amendments, because I have 8 of them, this section of the bill would be removed, ensuring that Planned Parenthood can continue to provide health care access across the United States, including the clinic that is in my district in Akron, Ohio, which, by the way, is the most active clinic in the entire state of Ohio. This reconciliation bill, as it stands, does not improve the lives of people of Ohio's 13th district, or really anywhere in this country. And if the committee were to adopt my amendments, constituents in all of our districts would have more money in their pockets, greater access to health care, and more food on their tables. My third amendment is the Lower Your Taxes Act, which is a bill that I introduced early this year and 2 years ago, and it would love it to be included in the reconciliation bill. This amendment would help families across the nation by making corporations pay their fair share and expanding the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. Additionally, I am offering an amendment to include the earned income tax credit look back, which would allow all taxpayers to use their earned income from previous years for calculating the EITC. People have told us they cannot afford living in the United States, and putting more money in people's pockets in order for them to pay for gas and groceries and housing and health care. Madam Chair, I see that my time is coming to an end, and I want to continue to be respectful of your committee, so I won't offer the other two. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before this committee and advocate on behalf of my hometown. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
You may submit your statement for the record. Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all the members, Ranking Member McGovern, for being here all day, all night, all morning. And thanks to all of my colleagues who came to testify to ensure that our constituents would have opportunity to have a little daylight shined on the debate regarding this terrible bill. A bill that adds to our national debt somewhere between $3.4 and $4.3 trillion, and that doesn't include the interest on that debt. Takes health care away from 13.7 million people And it doesn't make them immune to being ill or injured, it just makes them uninsured. So this is going to add extra cost in the way of uncompensated care to our hospitals. 9 million people would lose food security. And all of this is to give a big tax cut to people who really don't need one in this environment. Madam Chair, I have a couple of amendments. My first amendment would strike the energy provision and restore the green energy tax credits. The American energy resurgence is at a crossroad, and my Republican colleagues seem eager to take the country down the wrong path. This reckless bill would gut America's clean energy production, raising the energy cost for millions of families and killing hundreds of thousands of good-paying manufacturing jobs. Repealing these clean energy credits would raise electric costs by more than $110 per year per household. That's to all of our constituents in red states and blue states. And despite what my Republican colleagues say, clean energy is the industry of the future. 93% of all new American energy supplied last year came from solar, wind, and battery storage. When we passed the clean energy credit, we deliberately paired supply and demand side incentives. By repealing some of these credits, you put at risk the entire supply chain at a time when the need for energy has never been greater. And just as energy demands dramatically increase with AI and crypto, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are looking to decrease our nation's ability to meet this demand. Repealing these credits also cause economic pain to all American families. Whether my colleagues believe it or not, clean energy is the industry of the future, especially in Republican states and districts. Over 400,000 new clean energy jobs have been created since 2022. More than half are located in Republican districts. And this also disadvantages us at a time when China is trying to dominate the global clean energy supply chain. Shutting off the most impactful tool we have to combat this is absolutely reckless. I would urge all of my colleagues to support this. My second amendment deals with would strike the provision that the Republicans stuck in this bill to eliminate the $200 tax on silencers. At a time when Republicans are taking health care away from 3.7 million Americans, food assistance away from 9 million Americans, and child tax credits away from 4.5 million children, it's outrageous that they would spend $1.4 billion to make silencers cheaper. I'm disgusted that the congressional Republicans are spending $1.4 billion to make it harder for victims of mass shooters to know where their shots are coming from when they're trying to run for cover, and it's appalling that their actions will make it more dangerous for law enforcement when they respond to these mass shooters. Madam Chair, silencers kill cops and make it easier for criminals to evade capture, but they do nothing to muffle the devastation that family members feel when they lose a loved one. As a combat veteran, a lifelong hunter and gun owner, I can tell you this provision has nothing at all to do with hearing protection, but it has everything to do with making money for a certain segment of the gun industry. If you're concerned about protecting hearing from gunfire, buy and use earplugs. I urge members to support these two amendments, and this one in particular to restore the tax on silencers and to promote public safety. And I'd like to submit for the record, Madam Chair, a list of data showing where silencers were used in mass shootings to kill cops, to kill kids, to make it more difficult for police to respond, and to make our communities less safe.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Without objection.
Thank you.
It will be done. Ms. Simon, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. And what a day it's been. Madam Chair and Ranking Member, allowing me to speak on behalf of my constituents is one of the great honors of my life as a new member of the United States Congress, so thank you. And as you've heard from my Democratic colleagues today, the consequences, the deep, profound consequences of this bill and what the real life consequences will have on families in my district and across this great nation are devastating. My amendments are about, 1, protecting access to reproductive health care, and 2, protecting our social safety net and our federal workforce. 1, my amendment focusing on repro health. We all know that Medicaid ensures that millions of Americans, millions of working poor and low-income Americans have access to essential reproductive health care, including birth control, including prenatal care, including postpartum. My amendment would prohibit cuts to reproductive health services, including counseling, birth control, prenatal care, pregnancy, and of course, again, postpartum care. It would do so by requiring that the actuary of CMS certify that the majority's bill would not decrease access to or coverage to any of those things. Mercy, mercy. Don't touch women's reproductive health care. But there's no question in any of our minds, on both sides of the aisle, that this bill would do exactly that, attacking women. When we talk about the majorities pushing through the largest cuts to Medicaid in United States history, here's what it really means. It means Medicaid now covering 40% of all births in this great nation, including prenatal, including pregnancy care and postpartum. It means that millions of people in California, my district, and across this country will lose access to contraception, to family planning, and cervical cancer screenings. My God. Cutting Medicaid would mean rolling back progress. The Second Amendment that I presented and that was voted down shamefully by my Republican colleagues in the Oversight Committee, it was an amendment that would protect access to SNAP and support federal employee benefits. Simply put, this Second Amendment says that, 1, if the Trump administration cuts SNAP, the budget, by even $1, that the provisions in this bill that would cut federal employees' salaries, their pensions, labor protections would immediately expire. I know my time is about to expire, but I want to say one thing. Being a new member of Congress, what has hurt me the most is a woman who was a teen mom who took my daughter on the bus every single day to childcare, and I got support. I then, as a transit-dependent person, once a month took an hour-and-a-half bus to get $26 worth of food stamps, then would go to college, and then my day job, and then pick that baby up and come back again. That baby is an attorney. She passed the bar on the first time. How dare we cut benefits of hard-working Americans? I got to tell you a second thing that's really deeply on my heart. I learned that the child care workers in this here building who take care of the children of members of Congress make $30,000. You think they can pay for a 2-bedroom in Washington, D.C.? If you haven't been poor, don't legislate for the poor. Let's step up and protect Americans who are working with their full bodies, their full spirits. Instead, you are putting forth a bill that pathologizes the folks who need us most. Lastly, Madam Chair, I ask every Republican in the conference to walk with me after you vote this weekend. Get on a plane, come to the Children's Hospital in Oakland, and you tell the BMT nurses, you tell that mother who has a child with TMP in her nose that that child may in fact die. Come with me and walk with me and stand in line like I did when my husband died at the Social Security office begging for a $600 death benefit. Walk with me. You all have an opportunity to vote your conscience, your spirit. Vote for the people.
All right, welcome back into the Live Impact studio. I'm Nick Carboni, sports director here at WCNC Charlotte. It is May, and around here that means two things: golf, and we just wrapped up the PGA Championship, and NASCAR. NASCAR running at its true home here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. We had North Wilkesboro last weekend, another successful all-star race, and we've got the Coca-Cola 600 coming right on the heels of that this Memorial Day weekend. So we had to bring in somebody who could talk about all of that and talk about it well, and he does it every week for a living. Brad Gilley from Performance Racing Network does Fast Talk with Doug Rice and Alexis Erickson. You can find that every single week. GoPRN.com. Brad, thanks for joining me, man. I know it was a fun weekend up at North Wilkesboro.
Oh, my gosh. It was great. Doug Rice and I actually had a blast because we went up there and we were just the PA announcers. We didn't have to worry about broadcasting or anything. And that's what's fun because you get to really bring the energy in the building. And not that they needed us for that because the action on the track honestly spoke for itself. It was just, it's such an amazing weekend and an amazing piece of history.
What is it like to be there? I mean, because we see it on TV, and I've been there, and you could just tell the people that are there are just so into it. And they are at every track that the sport goes to, but there's some extra meaning at North Wilkesboro, feels like. What does it feel like?
Yeah, so I look at it this way. Imagine, and I'll think of like, a big concert that's been here in like the last 4 or 5 years. Imagine the Rolling Stones, right, who played at Panthers Stadium. Imagine if they were playing at a nightclub somewhere in downtown Charlotte, and you could go be there and feel that energy. That's kind of what North Wilkesboro is like because all of NASCAR's history is there, and the way that track looked when it closed in 1996 is pretty similar to the way it looks today. I mean, a few modern upgrades, but it still has that same soul, if you will. And I think that's the cool thing. The people who were there are just having a great time. It's easy to get around when you're on property, and it's fun to just see the history and feel like you're at something special. And I think that's maybe the best way I could describe it.
Absolutely, and you can feel it through the audio and the video on the broadcast. So let's put a pin in the All-Star race real quick because the Hall of Fame news is the most recent thing in NASCAR. Hall of Fame class of 26 coming out last night. We got Kurt Busch, really the headliner. You got Harry Gant, Ray Hendrick, the modified driver, getting in on the Pioneer era ballot. Humpy Wheeler, landmark award winner. Do you have any Humpy Wheeler stories for us? I've never gotten a chance to meet Humpy, but he's a legend. If you go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, you're going to hear Humpy stories.
I'll almost give my version of like almost everyone's Humpy story because a lot of it is the same. Number one, that man can tell stories, and he lived all of them. When you look at the history of our sport, Humpy lived it. And we talk about him as the title of the president and general manager of Charlotte Motor Speedway, but he was so much more to so many people. Humpy was the person that when a young driver was coming up, he would counsel or advise that driver. When a young reporter was coming into NASCAR, he would say, hey, look, if you're going to cover the sport, this is really what you need to look at and what you need to focus on and things like that. You look at our drivers today, from Kyle Busch to Joey Logano and, literally people who are champions of our sport, a lot of them came up driving Legends cars. That was Humpy's idea. That was his design. So Humpy made everyone better, and I think that's the best thing. And my personal experience with him, he was the guy that, you look at Humpy before you meet him for the first time, and you think, here's this larger-than-life person. And he is, don't get me wrong. Here's this larger-than-life person that's walking up to me and greeting me by name. Here's this larger-than-life person that the conversation we're having, you feel like it's the most important thing at the moment. And that, to me, is Humpy.
All class and now in the class of 2026 for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. All right, we got to talk about Kurt Busch. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's won some of the Crown Jewel races. He's won 34 Cup Series races as well. Longevity and excellence over time is what stands out to me. When you think about Kurt Busch's career and journey as it was, what stands out to you?
Performance. Kurt, it's funny because Kurt was really the beginning of the era of young drivers. I mean, Jeff Gordon is really that person. But Kurt came in and almost had like no street cred, no skins on the wall, no anything. Yesterday he was talking at the Hall of Fame. He's like, 1999, I'm driving a Legends car around the bull ring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. A year later, I'm qualifying 10th in a Cup race, beating people like Dale Earnhardt and so on. So Kurt comes in as this goofy-looking kid with an attitude that I think people looked at and were like, come on, man, who are you? Really? You're going to come in here like he was West Coast when this sport wasn't West Coast. But then he proved it out on the racetrack. Goes out there and wins 5 races at Bristol, wins the Daytona 500 late in his career, wins a championship early in his career. I mean, he did everything pretty much that there is to do in the sport and then some.
You know, unlike Humpy Wheeler, I have gotten the chance to meet Kurt Busch, and you know, I'm coming in from the outside, but I've watched racing over the years, and I've seen some of the on-track stuff and the battles and the disputes, and I'm like, that's not the guy I just met. What do you know about Kurt, just the human being and the individual?
So it's, you know, Kurt, on and off the track, I mean, you know, not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
You know, he was a guy with, I don't know, a lot of angst, a lot of attitude, a very short temper in a lot of ways. And on the track, you saw the short temper. You also saw it off the track as well. And when I think of Kurt Busch, you have to think of all of those things. When I think of Kurt Busch in the Hall of Fame, I think about what he did on the racetrack and the things that he accomplished, because he went up there against the best of the best, people who had been doing this, you know, since he was probably 8 years old, and went out there and was beating them on the racetrack. You know, but it was that same fire that we saw with his temper at times that also fueled him. And he wasn't afraid to yell at anybody, whether it was his crew chief, a reporter, or someone else. But he also was a person that when you sit down face to face with him is extremely engaging, extremely nice. You know, when he's away from the field of play, when the chin strap is loosened from the helmet, if you will, great guy.
All right, Brad Gilley here from Performance Racing Network. Let's talk about North Wilkesboro on the track. Christopher Bell said it was some of the best short track racing he's seen. Well, he had the benefit of winning and hoisting the $1 million check. What did you think of the racing on the track?
I thought the racing was incredible. You know, 2 years ago we ran on the original surface, or the one that was still there for 25 years. Last year it was the first year it was repaved, but they tried two different tires, a softer tire and what they were calling the primary tire at the time. Joey Logano went out there on the softer tire and led pretty much every lap, all but one. This year everyone came back, everyone's on the same tire, everyone's doing this. And the way they repaved the racetrack, actually the bottom lane is a different, let's call it sandpaper, a different grit of sandpaper than the middle lane than the top lane. So what they did was really genius, and it worked this second year. So drivers could drive up next to someone, run door to door, push them up the racetrack, do that. What they couldn't do is just drive underneath someone and blow them away. So it meant we just had cars side by side, lap after lap after lap. It was awesome.
And you know, there were fireworks, literally and figuratively. Nobody got punched in the face this year, as far as I know, but Joey Logano with kind of a swing with his comment about Christopher Bell saying he beat us with less of a car. What did you make about the ending, the on-track stuff between those two and Logano's comments after?
I'm here for it all. I mean,
right? Aren't
seriously.
we?
Yeah. Look, if you're the guy on the losing end of that, you're going to be mad, right?
Yep.
If you're the guy on the winning end of it, you're going to be happy. You're holding up $1 million check. If you're Joey Logano, and he's even said this since, you know, look, I would have raced Christopher the same way. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But that's what the All-Star race is about. It's about like a winner-take-all mentality to go out there and win $1 million. But for me, a good race is a combo of everything. I want to see passing. I want to see, you know, pit stops. I want to see wrecks. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like I always say, how do you know that they're pushing it to the edge if you don't ever see them push it over the edge? We saw people pushing it over the edge in many different ways, whether with pit road mistakes, whether wrecks, whether pushing each other's buttons. We had all of those things, like everything that goes into a NASCAR race, the ingredients, that was it right there Sunday night.
All right, Christopher Bell, I mean, look out, folks. I mean, this guy's winning left and right. He's the defending Coke 600 winner. We're going to talk about that race soon. Now he's got an all-star race under his belt. I think he's got 19 Cup Series wins in like 4.5 seasons. He's kind of understated sometimes, and his personality doesn't stand out as much as some of the guys in his class, so to speak. But what have you made of his career so far and where it can go? And this was a big win for him. It's not a points win, obviously, but that was a big one for him to pick up.
It really was. I'm a big Christopher Bell fan. Being a Texas guy, he's an Oklahoma guy. You know, you get someone from your region, and all of a sudden he does big things, whether it was trucks, Xfinity, and now in Cup. I think that's really cool. But this is what I like about Christopher as a driver. Number one, he's got an amazing crew chief in Adam Stevens, and the two of those gel together in a great, great way. But this is one thing Christopher has that it takes a lot of drivers years to understand, and good decisions on the racetrack. A lot of drivers can go out there and pass cars and run fast and make good pit stops and all of that, but sometimes you have to know when to go and know when not to go. And Christopher makes good decisions on the racetrack. That's a veteran, and he's early in his life a veteran, and he's going to be here doing this for a while.
And you got to know where to be when it's raining, because that's what he did
Yes,
last
that's
year at the
very true.
600. Although, you know, well earned. Last question about North Wilkesboro. I mean, this has been a 3 or 4 year journey now. It's gone from great story to, as we said, great racing. And like I mentioned, I mean, whether you're there or you're just watching, and if you haven't been, I highly suggest, you know, the next chance you have to go see Cup racing there, do it, or any racing there. It's going to be hard to not race there for the Cup Series in the future. I mean, I feel like it's gotten to that point. How do you think they kind of try to work North Wilkesboro in going forward after the success of the last couple of years?
I don't know what's going to happen next year. So that's as far as I can forecast. I genuinely don't know. But it's funny. I went that weekend, and Doug Rice and I were up in the PA booth. I go, man, imagine this with 13 more cars on the track, like a full field points race. But then as everything went, I kind of shifted, and I thought, but why? Like, this is really cool. You have a very special place, a unique place. You have NASCAR's history and roots. Maybe this should just be a special event. And I don't know that it can live on like that forever, don't get me wrong. If it was just me making a choice based on whatever, I would say, let's leave the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro. Let's ride this out, because a lot of people should get to experience this for what it is now. And if at a certain point it's like, okay, All-Star race, we've done that for however many years. Okay, the next new thing you can do is make it a points race and run a full field 400-lap event, something like that. So I don't think we have to dive into that just yet. But at a certain point, I think we do. And I think it'll be really cool when we do.
Seems like a sweet spot right now. That's for sure after this weekend. All right, turning to the Coca-Cola 600 as we continue our chat with Performance Racing Network's Brad Gilley. Every driver wants to win the Cup Series championship. Every one of them wants to win the Daytona 500. But if you ask all of them to a driver, the Coke 600 is high on that list. Why is that?
It's one of the crown jewels. Number one, it's the longest race of the year, and it's the longest race in any series, effectively, in what we do. I mean, I know there are off-road races that go 1,000 miles and all of that, but it's the longest single closed-circuit race that exists right now. So number one, that's big. History is there. This is Charlotte Motor Speedway, you know, and we have some legendary tracks in motorsports, from Daytona to Charlotte to Indianapolis, where we're racing this weekend as well. And it's one of NASCAR's crown jewels. So when you talk about, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. We just saw Kurt Busch go in. You know, one of the things you talk about when you talk about people's careers, a champion, a Coca-Cola 600 winner, a Daytona 500 winner, you add these races into that as well. The Southern 500 at Darlington, the same thing. So it's all of it that goes into it. And doing this in its traditional spot on Memorial Day weekend since the beginning, I mean, is just such an amazing spot on the schedule. So it's one of the crown jewels.
And it's obviously, it wraps up such a fantastic day of motorsports. You've got the Indy 500, Monaco Grand Prix. Each of the three races are such unique tests. What is the biggest test of the 600, and does it kind of lie in the name there?
Endurance. So the Indianapolis 500, and I love the Indy 500, don't get me wrong. You know, it starts and it ends in the sun shining the whole time. The Coca-Cola 600, that's what makes it different. And they talk about Charlotte being a track that swings in the way the car handles on the racetrack from day to night. And literally half the race is in the day, the other half is at night. And you might be just lights out fast the first 200 laps, and then all of a sudden lost the final 200, or vice versa, or maybe you're good through both. But that's the biggest test. This is the only race where, when I was working on pit road, I would not see like snacks and sandwiches brought to crew members. I would see dinner. This is the only race where I see drivers being handed sandwiches during pit stops and things like that, because, you know, they could be in that race car racing for 4 or 5 hours or more. And it is literally the only race where everything about it is different in that regard, and it's the endurance aspect of it.
Yeah, it is a long-haul flight for sure. Okay, Brad Gilley, what are the storylines that stand out entering the Coke 600, but I'm going to put an asterisk on that, besides Kyle Larson, because we're going to get to all that.
Yeah, we'll save that. The storylines, I think, are numerous. You have a couple of big-name drivers who haven't won yet that are Coca-Cola 600 champions. Ryan Blaney, he is probably one of the top 3 fastest cars all season long, and whatever has kept him out of victory lane. I think that's one of the big storylines among the drivers who haven't won. Chase Elliott is another person who, while, look, we've only seen him win one race over the last couple of years, last year at Texas, still, he's a Coca-Cola 600 winner. And Chase Elliott is one of those people that you look at and you say, okay, when is this going to happen for him again? So I think a lot of people are watching that among all of the storylines. And the fact is, all right, who can start stacking up points now among our race-winning drivers? We've only had 7 drivers win in 12 races. You know, and that seems like a low number by comparison to the past couple of years. But is someone else going to continue to separate themselves from the field, or is someone new going to come in and maybe take a big trophy?
Are any of those winless drivers, and you can extend it outside of the 600, like who is going into this race kind of getting on that desperation line. Like, summer's about to be here. It's going to be harder and harder to pick up a playoff spot. Like, who needs a win this weekend?
I look at Brad Keselowski is going to need a win to get into the playoffs. I mean, he's over 100 points behind the playoffs cut line, and that's assuming the cut line stays where it is, because if someone outside of the top 16 in points wins, then the cut line moves up to the next spot and so on. He's awful this year, and when he's not awful, they've had bad luck. You know, they've had some nice days and they've had some really bad days. That's the biggest one. Truthfully, and I know they're appealing their penalty, but his teammate Chris Buescher, he went from 12th in the standings to 25th on a 60-point penalty. I mean, that's huge. That puts him into must-win territory, even though we still have 14 races to go into the playoffs. So now we have teams that are potentially good, historically race-winning teams, whose backs are against the wall, and that's kind of cool.
How has this year's intermediate package on the track informed you about what we might be able to expect this weekend?
It's weird. In some ways, it's been consistent. In others, it's been sporadic. Take a guy like Ross Chastain. They went to Homestead, a 1.5-mile track, and were awful. They go to Texas, and he goes from 31st to finish second. They go to Kansas, they're mediocre again. So what's Charlotte going to bring?
Yeah.
I look at that. But then I do look at Denny Hamlin consistently fast on these tracks. He's had bad luck the last few weeks. I look at William Byron and Kyle Larson. These drivers have been consistently fast. Honestly, one person that people don't talk about, and I think they should, is Alex Bowman. His 1.5-mile record here recently, and I say recently, the past few years, is like top 3 in the series. He really is that good. So I think those are the drivers that run consistently well, and there are some other drivers who have struggled a little bit.
All right, now let's talk about Kyle Larson and double duty. You know, maybe it's because of the PGA Championship, and in my world, we're talking about all the different sports in Charlotte. We had the NFL schedule released last week. We had, the NBA lottery, and we don't have to dissect what happened there again for the Charlotte Hornets, but it seems like it's becoming the norm to like expect, okay, Kyle Larson, of course he's qualifying and he's going to do, it's still a big deal though. Like, this is a massive deal in motorsports to pull double duty, to attempt to run the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same weekend. What have you thought about the lead up to this year's attempt before we kind of dive into how it may go?
Yeah, I know the first year is always going to be bigger, but to me the first year was different in that first year running an Indy car, he had a lot of practice, but he goes to Indianapolis and it's like, wow, like he's good.
Yeah,
like he's taking
lead laps.
Yeah. I mean, he's just everything. This year leading up to it, he goes out in April for like a reconfirmation test or whatever and wrecks the car. He goes into the month of May, wrecks the car, qualifies 21st. So it's not like the same, wow, look at what Kyle Larson's doing, because we already saw what he could do. He was running top 10 until he had a speeding penalty last year. So I think now the bigger question is the unknown. He fell short. Literally the same rainstorm that delayed the start of the Indy 500 is the one that ended the Coca-Cola 600 early as it moved across the country. So the question then becomes, is he going to be able to make the 1,100 miles? So I think that's where some people temper their expectation or their anticipation, because it's like, okay, how's it going to happen?
Yeah, it was a letdown last year, seeing him land from Paget in that lightning storm. I mean, we're all standing out there like, are they going to get in? Are they going to get in? He gets to pit road, and they call the race. We'll talk to Brad Panovich about what the weather's going to be like in Bolt City soon, but it looks pretty good to me. Right now, he's row 7, I think, position 19 for the 500 on the grid. Besides winning both, which is like a pipe dream for anybody to do, but he's as you said, he's been pretty good in the IndyCar before. What do you think would have this be a great success for Kyle Larson? Would it be winning the 600 and finishing the Indy 500, or a top 10 in the Indy 500?
So if you're greedy, well, he's going to win both, right? If you're a Kyle Larson fan. Beyond that, I think first, run all the laps. Let's get in the 1,100 miles, because that's the cool story of it. Kurt Busch was the last one to do it, finished 6th at Indy and blew an engine after 100 and something laps, running well at Charlotte. Run the 1,100 miles. That's number one. That's successful. Number 2, let's start getting a little more greedy. Top 10 in both. How about that? Maybe top 5, maybe you can win one of them. And I think the Coca-Cola 600 is obviously very doable because it's so long. But you never know what can happen. There's drama in both of these races. But I think number 1 is just run the laps. Say you completed it, and then let's start getting more and more greedy from there.
I ask this knowing that Tony Stewart completed all 1,100. I believe finished top 10 in each race 2 different years.
The second year.
Or the second year. Yeah. Does it feel different when Kyle Larson goes to Indy, though? Does it feel like this isn't just a NASCAR driver trying the Indy 500? I mean, did it feel like that with Tony Stewart? I wasn't around for Tony Stewart's double duties, but it just feels like he has transcended motorsports a little bit from, is he a NASCAR driver? Is he an IndyCar driver? Is he just a driver?
Yeah, you look at all the drivers that preceded Kyle Larson in doing this, John Andretti, Robbie Gordon, and Tony Stewart. They all had an IndyCar background.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart was an IndyCar champion, so it's, he had that. And all along the way, he always talked about the Indy 500. Growing up in Indiana, it was this, because he was an Indiana person. That's what felt different about that one. Like, oh, Tony gets another chance at winning the Indy 500. Kurt Busch goes and does it, similar to Kyle Larson. He's not an IndyCar background, but Kurt Busch is a guy like, man, he can drive anything as well. He was very successful in NHRA when he tried the Pro Stock division also. I think what makes Kyle Larson different is because he races so many different types of car. He gets in the wing sprint car, and he's won all of their Crown Jewel events. He gets in a dirt late model and literally wins his first time out, then wins their Crown Jewel events. He goes out to the Chili Bowl in Tulsa, Oklahoma, goes out and wins that event. I mean, it's Kyle Larson is the everything. So he's not the Indy guy who's running the Indy 500. He's the everything guy that's running the Indy 500.
All right, here wrapping up with Brad Gilley from Performance Racing Network as we talk about the Coca-Cola 600 this weekend. Let's just talk about the season so far. What has stood out to you through these 12 races of 2025 so far? As we mentioned, 12 races, 7 separate winners. What have been kind of some of the headlines and big storylines for you?
For me, we had big storylines when Christopher Bell won 3 races in a row. Could he win 4 in a row?
Yeah.
And then Denny Hamlin goes and wins 2 races in a row. Ooh, could he be the next one for 3 in a row? Those things are really cool. But what's interesting is the most consistent drivers are actually some of the ones who haven't been to victory lane yet, like Chase Elliott. William Byron comes out and wins the Daytona 500, but we haven't really seen him in victory lane and not really contending much, although they've been fast every week.
Yeah.
Kyle Larson wins and then might have, a bad week with trouble and so on and so forth. Denny Hamlin, he goes out there and wins those 2 races. And then as a Texan, it's bad karma because he walked across the stage and gave the horns down, blew his engine. Then the next week lost a clutch. Then the next week is awful in the All-Star race. That karma's following him. But it's that. It's the people who have won. It's almost like in baseball, someone with a big batting average, but a bad on-base percentage. And I think that's sort of one of the stories we've seen.
Yeah. Does the Coca-Cola 600 serve as kind of a reset a little bit for the season or a pivot point as we head into the summer?
Pivot point's the best way to put it. Because if you look at, we've run a lot of NASCAR's traditional style tracks, from Martinsville to Darlington to Las Vegas, Texas, Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, so on and so forth. And this is the halfway point of the regular season. 13 down, 13 to go before we get into the playoffs. So for the Coca-Cola 600, this is the beginning of summer. There is a shift. I mean, there just simply is a shift. Now we're going to go run 4 road course races in the next 13. We've got 2 speedway races with Atlanta and Daytona. We have tracks where we only go once a year, Michigan, Pocono, Nashville, Richmond, so on and so forth. Plus among those road courses we mentioned, Mexico City for the first time, Chicago Street Race, which is still fairly new. So this is the biggest variety in our schedule, biggest potential in our schedule as well, I feel, to find a unique winner, a Shane Van Gisbergen, a Brad Keselowski from 33rd in points, something like that.
Well, you talked about North Wilkesboro Speedway feeling like you're at the roots of NASCAR again. Does Charlotte Motor Speedway and the Coke 600 still have that feel? I mean, it goes all the way back to the World 600 and Bruton Smith. Does it still have that feel to you all these years later when you're there?
It does. It does for me as well. And I think it does for a lot of people too, and which is really cool. What I love about being at Charlotte Motor Speedway, you can walk around. I mean, this is a track that opened in 1961, right? And you can see things that were there when it opened. Then you can see all the modern amenities that were added onto it also. So that is one of the biggest things that I feel. And then I think of the list of winners, and it's literally been a who's who of NASCAR greats, from the Pettys and the Bakers and the Pearsons and so on and so forth. and Jeff Gordon, Matt Kenseth, Bobby Labonte getting their first career wins there. I mean, it's all of that history in one place. So yeah, this feels bigger when you get there.
All right, we'll be prepared for a long night, hopefully a fun night at the Coca-Cola 600 this Memorial Day Sunday. Brad Gilley from Performance Racing Network, thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
You
This
got
is
it.
awesome.
Good luck at the track. And we are going to get to weather, I believe. Check of weather here from the Impact Studio.
And a very good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist. Majestic storm, and it is going to be a warm one today. We had some strong storms pass throughout the overnight hours. Those storms are gone, and now the sunshine is on the way. Today is going to be the warmest day out of our 7-day forecast. You can anticipate gradually clearing conditions, so some sunshine later on into the afternoon, plus those temperatures, they're rising to nearly 90 degrees today. So it is going to be a sunny and warm afternoon, but it's also going to be less humid because we have a cold front on the way. That front will eventually drop those temperatures down a little bit tomorrow, but it will also increase our winds. Heading into our holiday weekend, if you do have any plans for your Memorial Day weekend, whether you're heading out to the lake or you have plans to go boating, it's going to be fantastic. Monday may bring an opportunity for showers and thunderstorms. We'll get to that, but let's start with today. There's the rest of your Wednesday. You can see temperatures will be warmer than where we topped off yesterday by 5 degrees, a high of 88, so nearing that 90-degree point for the Charlotte metro area. Want to say hello to everyone watching out there towards our mountain counties. A little bit cooler for you, but still enjoyable. We'll see a mix of upper 60s and low 70s. For the foothills, we'll see those mid to upper 60, mid to upper 80-degree temperatures, 85 degrees out there towards Morganton. Getting warm across the Charlotte metro area, 87 for Statesville, 88 today for Gastonia. And check this out, we could hit some low 90-degree temperatures today out towards the Chesterfield area. Now with the warmth today, you'll notice that those winds start to become a little bit breezy this afternoon. But notice as we progress throughout our Wednesday night and into Thursday, our winds, especially for the mountains, will really increase. Some of our winds could gust anywhere from 40 to even 50 miles an hour. And Thursday as a whole for everyone, I think will just be a windy day. For the Charlotte metro area, we could see some of those winds gusting up to around 30 miles an hour. So if you have something outside that might blow away or get damaged or tossed down the road, make sure it's all secure and tucked away. Now with that front that pushes through, it's a dry cold front. So it's going to pick up our winds, but back behind it, it's bringing in drier air. So that's why the humidity is going to be much less. Notice that drop in temperatures as well. Almost 90 degrees today. Tomorrow still warm, 83. And then as we're heading towards our Memorial Day weekend, temperatures will begin to fall into the 70s. Still very, very enjoyable. Next week, though, we'll hold on to those below average temperatures into the mid to upper 70s. Our average high is about 81 degrees. There's a look at our precipitation over the next 10 days. We won't have to worry about things really until Monday. So if you have plans for your Memorial Day, you're going to want to stay close to our team because we are tracking some opportunities for some rain showers Monday and Tuesday. Futurecast still looks fantastic for your Wednesday this afternoon. Again, it is going to be gorgeous. Lots of sunshine, enjoyable. If you want to grab the family, go for a bike ride, head out to the Greenway. We're going to be looking at very comfortable conditions. Then heading into our Thursday morning, it's going to be nice again. Again, not tracking really any major rain chances until next week. Here's a look at our Memorial Day weekend planner. You can see temperatures will be very enjoyable. Monday, about a 40% chance of seeing some showers and thunderstorms, though. There you go. Our 7-day forecast, really quite nice if you're heading out to the Charlotte Knights game. Tonight, it's going to be nice for a bark in the park. Tomorrow for a Thursday, a high of 83 degrees, and then temperatures, they begin to slip into the 70s Friday and Saturday, but pretty agreeable weather for most people, especially if you're heading out to the Charlotte FC game or maybe the Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday. Monday is going to be the next day where we could see some active weather, so make sure you are staying close to our weather team, especially if you do plan to be out on the lake to be boating.
Right. So there you have it, folks. A look at the forecast for the next few days. Vanessa Rufus here, by the way, taking over in the Live Impact News studio. Thanks for tuning in here on WCNC Plus. We want to turn the page now and talk about a big headline for the Charlotte area over the last, I guess, couple of days, but really last few weeks, really, if you look at the larger picture of this ongoing saga. So we want to bring in our Julie Kay, who's joining us here in the Live Impact News studio, because this is all regarding, I guess at this point, fallout from what we've now determined is a state auditor's investigation into city leaders over an alleged settlement with the CMPD police chief. And so now the GOP for District 12 is weighing in.
Yeah, so I talked to Abdul Ali. He is the chairman of the GOP for the 12th District. That represents Mecklenburg County and parts of Charlotte. And he wants Mayor Lyles to resign. So that is the headline today, is that now fingers are being pointed back at council and back at city government, and now it's falling on the mayor. And so I got a chance to talk to him today. He released that statement actually on Monday before even the state auditor's investigation was announced on Tuesday. And I said, you know, why the mayor? Why not any of the other people involved? Why not Jennings? We've heard Krista Bakari call for resignation from Chief Jennings. He said, you know, I think the quote was, "The buck stops with her. She is the leader. She is the figurehead. She is the one in all these decisions, and so she should take the fall for this." There's also an element of this District 6 seat that Tark Bakari left behind when he went to the Trump administration. Krista Bakari, his wife, ran for that, had a lot of very public support, and that is, let me correct myself, not ran for that yet, but to fill in that seat until you get a chance to run in November. But it came down to a tie between her, 5 votes for her and 5 votes for Edwin Peacock, and the mayor had the deciding factor of 1 vote, the tiebreaker, and she voted for Peacock. And so I think that's an element of this as well. Ali tells me that he's disappointed in that. He thinks Peacock is going to be a good man for the job. He's got experience in council, but he was disappointed that, you know, she voted against Bakari, and he felt that that was a personal decision by Mayor Lyles. So lots of layers to this for sure, but this is the first call for resignation we've heard in regards to the mayor.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like every time we bring this up on Live Impact News, we kind of have to recap the whole thing just for folks to know. So this actually goes back, I mean, it goes back before the officer ambush of last year, because we know that Tark Bakari had always been pushing for these outer carrier vests, but right in the wake of that, it kind of reinvigorated that push. Officers wanted to wear these outer carrier vests. Tark Bakari apparently was speaking with the police chief, pushing for this. Essentially, we've obtained these text messages saying that he's going to wage war with the police chief over this. And this is what this alleged settlement actually stemmed from, right?
Exactly. And it is, like you mentioned, it goes back over a year at this point. So there's so many layers and pieces to this story, but it does boil down to a disagreement between CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings and former councilman, at the time Councilman Tark Bakari. Tark really pushing for these outer carrier vests. And when Jennings did not agree with his push, it got very heated. So Jennings is saying, you know, these texts are potentially going to hurt my career. These are threats. These are defamatory. Bakari saying, you know, this was a personal interaction. I didn't say this publicly, though he did push for those outer carrier vests very publicly. This particular interaction was private. And so that, I think, is where this kind of back and forth comes in. Regardless of whose side you're on, it kind of sounds like everybody on the outside of council wants to know more information about this settlement. So the city allegedly settled with Jennings over these quote-unquote defamatory text messages for up to $300,000. The city is not confirming that. Interim city attorney Anthony Fox has been very clear that they are not going to confirm it. They don't have to, per state law, he says. That is now coming into question as well with the state auditor's investigation. The state auditor said in the press release, there is no evidence other than what we have so far, which is news reports, these text messages, these allegations of corruptions that have come within council. So this is just the very beginning stages of this investigation. But to answer your question, yes, this is a very layered topic, and it did stem from a disagreement between Jennings and a council member who's no longer here.
Yeah. I mean, we broke the news of the state auditor's investigation yesterday afternoon here on Live Impact News, and I remember reading through that letter, seeing Dave Boliak talking about, this was addressed, by the way, to Mayor Lyles, but, you know, saying that we're going to be asking you if this payment or this settlement exists, how much the settlement was for, where is this money coming from? And I remember, and I'm going to paraphrase it, like one of the last lines in the letter was, even if it were just a penny that was given, that would be a problem, according to the state auditor, if this was done out of the public view without public knowledge that this settlement exists. So I guess I'm curious as far as today. You know, I know last night we were trying to follow up with the auditor's office to see if anyone could release just a few more details. Are you following up today? Who else are we reaching out to today? Have we been able to hear anything official from anyone?
I am actually surprised we haven't heard back yet from the auditor's office. Nobody has, to my knowledge, but we have reached out multiple times to the auditor's office, call and email. We've also reached out to the mayor's office. The only person that we've really heard back from so far is we did get a statement from the interim city attorney, Anthony Fox, and he said, you know, kind of reiterating what he's been saying, we will comply with this investigation, we will comply with the law, but doubling down that we have already been doing that. He stands by everything that he has said so far. But no, we've got no information yet on timeline. Like I mentioned, this is the very beginning stages of that investigation. It sounds like Dave Volek has not gone into any other details yet. He just decided to do this. But as far as how long that will actually take, I mean, we have no concept of how much time that could be. So it'll be interesting to see at this point, because of how much the city is standing by their decision to not release any information. And we have, our Nate Morabito has also, you know, been requesting those records as well from the city. We have not gotten any of that information back. If it is to come out, if there is a settlement, it would probably come from the state auditor at this point. So this is kind of bringing in the big guns, for lack of better terms, that this is really where it's going to have to come from if we get that information at all.
Yeah, really, really interesting saga at this point. There's just so many twists and turns, and I feel like every day we see something new rising to the top as a headline. So today you'll be joining us here on WCNC Plus for some reporting for our evening news. So when can folks see your report tonight?
I'll be on at 5 and 6, and that will be my interview with the GOP chairman for District 12.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we're always bringing you here on Live Impact News, but there's always something going on from a policy and/or city, county affairs standpoint. So
no breaks for me.
Yeah,
we'll be back again, I'm sure.
Well, we appreciate you. All right, Julie Kay reporting for us here in the Live Impact News studio, and of course, we'll see Julie's next report coming up here on WCNC Plus at 5 o'clock. Okay, folks, let's turn the page now. We'll move to the federal level here. We've got even more subcommittee meetings that are happening inside Congress. So today, one that we're following here, well, we've got the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, which is on privacy technology and the law. They are looking at AI-generated deepfakes with Martina McBride, and so we've got that. We're also keeping an eye on the so-called big, beautiful bill, if you will. So the House Committee on Rules is meeting on this one. Looks like that feed is ready for us to take. So we're going to go to the House Committee. Of course, we can always pivot to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee as we get more information, that feed comes in. But for now, let's send you to the House regarding big, beautiful bill.
Age 26, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, restraining the cost growth in health care. That's why it's been so difficult to listen, and we've done some myth busting here. It's been difficult to listen to, okay, no one's going to lose health coverage under the billionaire tax giveaway, but we know what the CBO has said, and that's why I'm offering a couple of amendments. One with Representative Gray that says none of the provisions of this bill will have the effect of increasing the number of uninsured individuals. And then another that's focused truly on Medicaid fraud. If you all haven't followed this story out of Florida on Medicaid fraud, I encourage you to do so. And we can do that by passing my amendment here. There was a settlement for overpayment, overbilling of drugs by Florida's largest Medicaid provider. They entered into a settlement agreement, but the governor took $10 million out of the $67 million settlement and funneled it to political action committees to oppose constitutional amendments on the ballot last year that were totally unrelated. It was actually on cannabis. So it took the Medicaid dollars, funneled it through nonprofits, and then to political campaigns. So this has been a bipartisan investigation in the Florida legislature, And while there's been so much discussion here that there's so much fraud and waste and abuse in Medicaid, it's time to really go after some of the fraudsters in Medicaid. And I think this can be a bipartisan effort to tackle them, to tackle it. But, you know, back to the affordability, and the fact is, what I'm hearing from folks, it's not just from neighbors, it's from all of our hardworking providers. Most doctors' groups are opposed to the billionaire tax giveaway, nurses' organizations, and I wanted to read just a few for the record that have come to my attention. This is a letter from leading health advocates. Okay, I'm going to offer this for the record and maybe hope that a few of my colleagues will ask about these when we get to Q&A. But this isn't right. Let's put the people's interests first over the special interests. Thank you. I yield back.
Without objection, they'll be put into the record. Mr. Levin.
Madam Chair, thank you. My colleagues have made many powerful arguments against this bill today, and I'm here for a very simple reason. That's to offer what I believe is a reasonable bipartisan amendment focused on a shared goal, protecting the American people from higher energy costs. This amendment would ensure that key provisions in this bill, particularly those that eliminate support for clean energy and roll back environmental protections, cannot take effect unless the Energy Information Administration confirms that they will not increase monthly household utility bills. That's it. If the policies in this bill are truly going to reduce costs, then this amendment simply adds a common sense verification step to confirm it, nothing more. But independent analysis already indicates this bill would raise energy costs for American families by at least 7%. That's an average of more than $110 per year per household at a time when nearly 80 million Americans are struggling to pay their utility bills. We shouldn't be adding to that burden. Now, some of my colleagues have asked, look, if clean energy is so affordable, why does it still need tax credits? It's a good question, and the answer is this. Clean energy is already the cheapest source of power in many markets, but the transition still requires upfront investment. We need to build transmission lines, upgrade the grid, and scale American manufacturing. The credits help unlock those investments and deliver long-term savings to consumers. At the same time, fossil fuels continue to benefit from long-standing subsidies and infrastructure that's been built and paid for over decades. Without tax credits, we're not creating a level playing field. We're favoring the status quo at the expense of innovation and competition. These investments are not only saving families money in the long run, they're creating jobs, and not just in any one part of the country. The clean energy economy is growing in red districts and blue districts alike. Solar plants, battery storage facilities, wind farms, electric vehicle factories, grid modernization projects. These are putting people to work in rural areas, in small towns, in manufacturing hubs, and communities that have seen jobs vanish in past decades. From Georgia to Michigan, North Carolina to California, clean energy is rebuilding America's industrial base and restoring pride and prosperity, including in places that have been overlooked for far too long. If we eliminate the tools that are making this growth possible, we don't just risk raising prices, we risk losing momentum on job creation, competitiveness, and true energy independence. This bill also contains provisions that raise fees on renewables, will make it easier and cheaper for fossil fuel developers to access public lands. It weakens permitting protections, and it undercuts the economic foundation for one of the fastest growing sectors in our economy, all while shifting costs back to American families. Regardless of how you feel about clean energy or climate change, I hope we can agree on this. If we're going to pass legislation that affects energy markets, we have a responsibility to ensure it doesn't drive up costs for the people we represent. That's what this amendment does. It doesn't block the bill. It doesn't impose ideology. It simply says, let's get the facts first. Let's verify the real-world impact before we make irreversible changes. Our constituents expect us to be responsible stewards, not just of the environment, but of their hard-earned money. Let's show that we can work together to protect them from higher utility bills and preserve the job growth we're finally seeing across this country. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and to stand up for families, fairness, and for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Ms. Sewell, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam Chair, for the opportunity for me to give a voice to the great people of Alabama's 7th Congressional District on this debate. I have 2 amendments. My first amendment, amendment number 209, would extend the Affordable Care Act's premium tax credits to Americans in non-Medicaid expansion states like Alabama, who are caught in this coverage gap, as well as Americans who have lost Medicaid coverage as a result of the Republicans' cut in this bill. 1.5 million Americans are in the Medicaid coverage gap. These are the working poor. They work every day, many minimum wage jobs, and they make too much money to be on Medicaid, but they don't make enough money to be able to afford health insurance. They are truly the working poor. We must not let the ACA enhanced premium tax credits expire December 31st, 2025. And we must expand the...
All right, folks, we are going to pivot away from this House meeting. Of course, we talked about the topic here at hand, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. In the words of the president, this is that tax bill which has been under discussion for a bit now, receiving some pushback from within the Republican Party. And House Speaker Mike Johnson has a self-imposed deadline of Memorial Day to get this done and passed. So we can expect more meetings like this throughout the day and in the days to come. Meantime, we want to turn now to that Senate meeting that we were discussing. So this is the Judiciary Subcommittee on Privacy Technology and the Law. They're talking about AI-generated deep fakes with testimony from Martina McBride. And this is pertaining to the No Fakes Act. And this would basically take aim at any sort of attempts to copy someone's voice through AI, which essentially hurts the value of the artist, according to some of the testimony here. Let's listen in live here on Live Impact News.
Is illegal. And we've got to get back to that. Parole is fine on a case-by-case basis. It's been in the law since the 60s or the 50s. But the legislative intent for it was always severe need, humanitarian needs, or significant public interest. And that was a one-off, not necessarily supposed to be mass programs used to obfuscate the numbers at the border.
Do you think this is something where Congress likely may need to act on this issue?
Senator, there have been bills previously introduced that I think would certainly handle this on parole reform, and I would love to see another.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have just in my remaining minute, my question is for Mr. Woodward. As serving as Associate Attorney General, you will have direct oversight over the Civil Rights Division. This is something that I think is critically important. We want to make sure that everyone has the right to vote, and they also have the security and peace of mind of knowing that their vote counts. When you're looking at that, one of the reasons I actually introduced the Citizen Ballot Protection Act last Congress, and I'll reintroduce it this year, and I have a number of colleagues that have different pieces of legislation that address this same thing, is amending federal law to explicitly allow states to put in place a proof of citizenship requirement, both on federal mail-in voter registration forms and state mail voter registration forms that might be developed. I think that's a common sense way to ensure integrity of the vote, that American citizens are the ones voting in these elections. And my question for you is, if confirmed, what plans do you have to ensure that DOJ and the Civil Rights Division will work to enhance the integrity and security of our elections and make sure that the voters, the American citizens, aren't deluded?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. I couldn't agree more. It is of critical importance to ensure that our nation's civil rights laws are enforced. If confirmed, I look forward to working with AAG Dillon and ensuring that voting rights are as respected as every other right. And so I'm confident that we will find a way to accomplish this, but also welcome additional legislation. Of course, the office does not itself promote policy. It enforces the law. And so if your legislation is passed, we would pursue that as aggressively as possible.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you both.
On behalf of the chair, Senator Welch.
Thank you very much. I'm not making this up.
I've been recognized.
On behalf of the chair, I recognized you.
I apologize
looking over.
I apologize for distracting the senator, gentlemen.
Thank you. Mr. Edlow, a couple of questions. Number one, immigration is a mess here, and a lot of the responsibility is Congress, because there are areas where we should legislate. I agree with that, and that includes on parole. But one of the areas I'm really concerned about is ag workers. We've had some of our dairy workers picked up, and I am fully in support of hopefully bipartisan legislation that allows for our farmers to get the labor they need in Vermont. If we don't have immigrant labor, our cows don't get milked. It's just that simple. Do you have a view on a position that would reform the immigration laws that would allow for ag workers in Tennessee and Kentucky and Vermont in Iowa?
No, thank you, Senator. I'm, well aware of this issue, having worked for a congressman from Idaho. I've spoken to many people within the dairy industry and understand what they face.
So what do you think we should do?
Well, I think we do need to talk, and if confirmed, I'm happy to work with you and your staff on a bipartisan basis to figure out.
I assume that. What should we do? We have to have an ag worker a policy that allows for the ease for vetted folks who want to work on a farm to be able to do it.
Respectfully, sir, I do agree in that we do need to look closely at both the H-2A and H-2B visas as they exist right now to see whether and how they need to be updated to address the needs of these industries.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Mr. Woodward, thank you for our visit yesterday in the office. I appreciated that. The one thing that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today is when you had two clients in the Mar-a-Lago case, you had Mr. Nada and you had Mr. Taveras, right?
Senator, thank you for the question. I did represent Mr. Nada, and for a time I did represent Mr. Taveras.
Right, and this is where I just wanted to get an explanation of what happened. My understanding is Mr. Taveras testified in the grand jury. The judge informed him that there may be a conflict because of the situation he faced and your other client, Mr. Nada. And at that point, he got a new lawyer. Is that right? I think a federal defender.
Senator, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I also want to be mindful of not divulging confidences involving my former clients. But that generally tracks.
Yeah, so this is public record. Of course, I'm not going to ask you to divulge any confidences, so I am with you there. But what I understand happened is that and this is the public record, that Mr. Taveras changed his testimony from what he had said in the grand jury, where basically he was saying he didn't recall anything, to testimony where he said the boss wanted those tapes to be lost. So how did it happen that you went from, and you were being paid by a Trump PAC, as I understand it, or by a political action committee, is that correct, for your representation on behalf of both of these individuals?
Senator, I have received compensation by the Save America PAC. Yes, that's public.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So how did this, what happened that the testimony that Mr. Taveras had given suddenly became different testimony after he got a new lawyer?
Senator, with respect, the public record speaks for itself, and I would be remiss were I to engage in a discussion about advice that I provided any former client.
All right, but I am correct that in the public record, Mr. Taveras gave testimony that he recanted once he got a new lawyer.
Again, Senator, with the utmost respect, I think the public record says a great deal about this, and I'll let it speak for itself.
Okay. I have no more questions. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of the chair, Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate all of you being here. It's never an easy thing to sit and stand for questions among all of my esteemed colleagues. Thank you very much, and thank you to your families. I often find these are harder on our families than it is on the folks taking the incoming questions. So thank you very much. Each of you comes with a unique background and indeed experience and expertise in the jobs that that President Trump and our nation is asking you to take on. I know you could probably make a lot more money in the private sector, and I am always inspired by people